G'day, folks. Welcome to Faction Focus. You're here with the coach. We are going to be talking about the Ogor Mawtribes. I'm here with two amazing, I don't want to say dad bods, but I want to say absolute tyrants in their field, butchers, fire bellies, and something a little bit extra. First off, we have a man who probably needs no introduction. It is Doom and Darkness himself. How are you, sir?
I'm good, thank you, sir. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for what I think is the debut on the channel. I think we've obviously bounced between each other, but it's great to have you on talking about ogres. For the benefits of anyone who doesn't know who you are, would you mind giving a quick introduction?
I'm an ogre enthusiast. That's all I'll call myself. I have been for some time. I identify with the dad bod, and yeah, that's about it. I play them. I like playing them, and yeah, that's all.
You've been running ogres for some time now, so it's great to have your gut-busting insight as we explore this book.
Yep, sure.
Awesome. And Mick Wendel, Mickey Wendel from Ireland. How are you, sir?
Good. No, relatively speaking. But yeah, I'm excited to be here at the moment. It's fun always chatting about getting some good talks about a book that you love. So I'm also an ogre enthusiast, but I love to wear dressing gowns as well, at home and at events. And yeah, I'm psyched to get my teeth into this faction focus.
A little bit under the Everwinter, but it's good to have. I'm sweating bollocks. Is the first time I'm going to single it on, but I'm really looking forward to learning more about the former ogre empire that got split out into Age of Sigmar. It's been brought back together. You've got a little cool little terrain piece, and I want to learn a lot about the Mawtribes. So, do you guys ready to kick in and let's talk shop?
Sure are.
Absolutely.
Awesome. So you guys have been playing ogres for a while now. I'd love to know a little bit, Mick, maybe you can take us through. I knew the ogres from back in the old Warhammer Fantasy days. Kind of got split up in Age of Sigmar, and now they're being reunited. So I guess my question is, who are the Ogor Mawtribes?
Who are the Ogor Mawtribes? Oh no. Well, I suppose they're mercenaries, for lack of a better word. They originally started off as a spare faction in fantasy battles, and then eventually their popularity brought them into the game, and they got split up. They're split up in the Age of Sigmar. It kind of made sense because both factions had enough to kind of keep them afloat. So you had a lot of stuff in the Beastclaw Raiders. The problem is a lot of stuff in Beastclaw Raiders sucked at the time. Like even the model sculpts and stuff that you're kind of like, I kind of want everything. So I was a bit more on I wanted ogres, not just the Beastclaws, and so that's why I went with the Gutbusters, who are basically like a kind of like raiding tribes. They basically just go and take what they want. That's it. And they fight. There's a lot of civil war in the ogre kingdoms. I'm not too well versed in their lore. I've read a bit of the new book, and I read a few of the old fantasy novels. And the one thing I noticed actually about the old fantasy novels was ogres actually come across a lot more cunning and clever than they do in the game. So people think ogres are big dumb brutes, but they're actually quite smart and cunning and fast. So that was like interesting to get that sort of insight into what an ogre is like. They're also constantly hungry. They're just hungry all the time. And when there was if there was one tyrant that actually I was reading a bit of the book here, one tyrant actually got full, and there was a big hullabaloo over whether this was blasphemy or whether it was, oh my God, he's finally reached ascension. He's got to the point where he's full. That's never happened to an ogre before. Oh my God, like I wish I was him. So there was a big argument over whether that was good or bad. So that's another reason why I actually identify with the ogres quite a lot. I like to eat a lot also.
And eventually, if you get full, you're going to ascend to godhood.
Hopefully, yeah, that's the idea.
Doom, is there anything you'd want to add to that?
Yeah, so I mean, just talking lore-wise, there is sort of there's the old lore from Warhammer Fantasy, and it's very different to the lore that we have here today. So the idea of them have an insatiable hunger comes from the old world and a god that they used to worship that essentially cursed them, which was called the Maw, and that's represented all through the War Scrolls and so forth. And that's where their sort of hunger came from, and that was always a unique and independent god of anything else. Now in Age of Sigmar, like Mike said, we kind of have two factions that were split apart. There's the Gutbusters, which are all the foot sort of ogres, and then you have the Beastclaw Raiders. And the Beastclaw Raiders, they ride your Stonehorns, your Thunder Tusks, and your Mournfang, but they're hunted by something called the Everwinter. So the Everwinter just imagine the worst blizzard you can imagine, and it's always at the backs of the Beastclaw Raiders, ever pushing them forward, pushing them across the lands, just eating everything. So the nature of the Everwinter is not really quite known. It's like, did they release the winter gods from the realms of Shaiish, and now they're either haunting them or they're blessing them even? But there's not a full detailed description of the Everwinter why and where. But the Gutbusters don't like it. So they're like, you Beastclaw guys, you stay over there and keep that Everwinter away from us. But and that's sort of a little bit of the friction between the two factions inside the whole faction.
Great. So you've got two completely different factions. That's really cool. That's really cool. I really like that. Awesome. So we know a little bit about the ogres, and I'm sure, I've looked at the book and there's plenty more that you can kind of deep down. And, if you're interested in lore, check out 2+ Tough, check out the Battle Tome. There's a lot of cool stuff in the book. But I guess if I'm going to take the Mawtribes, I want to know probably what attracted you and what are those strengths? So, Mick, I might throw you to what attracted you to the ogres, and what are the strengths in this book that you've picked up? You're on mute. You'll need to speak up. I'm wearing a towel.
Sorry, I have myself on mute. No, there was a bit of interference on the video there. I don't know if it was my internet or something else. Could you repeat that again?
I was just saying, what attracted you to the army, and more importantly, what are the strengths of this book?
Well, what originally attracted me to the army was lead belchers. I was about 12 or 13 or something, and I went into the Nottingham store, the smaller one, not Warhammer World, and my first ever game of fantasy was an introduction with ogres versus greenskins, and or orcs and goblins. That's what it was, yeah. And I loved them. They were just awesome. And also, I hated painting, and I did a paint lesson with the manager there. So that was my two things. They were easy to paint, and they had big cannons, all of them. So loved that. Kind of just with them literally ever since then. But now, like, I actually dropped them when Age of Sigmar started in favor of Zinch because I wanted to start a new army. But then when I kind of got sick of that, I said, you know what? I'm just going to pick up the ogres again, repaint them. Had some cool ideas to paint them in a kind of like snowy theme, but they were all rich with like really good sallow skin and lots of gold items on them. So it was more of a hobby of love at that point rather than something they were good at. And then I kind of found out through that they were just their individual war scrolls are actually really powerful, and the only thing they actually lacked were allegiance abilities or anything like that. So that like it was more of the historic love I had for them that brought me back to Gutbusters. I'm not sure I would have given them a chance if I didn't already like have that love for them. I wouldn't have chosen them. But in the new book actually brings a lot of that's my tiny little ogre screaming in the background. So the new stuff is great. Like they really added some good flavor to the book. Like the book is very flavorsome. First glance, it may not be the most competitive thing, but that wasn't what I was looking at. I was looking at something that just added to what I enjoyed about the book before. So I had a bit of success with them before, so I was excited to get my teeth into anything. One thing I love about the new book, the Maw Pot. Absolutely love it. Little bit of lore I do know actually is about the Maw Pot, and the Maw Pot is great because what's inside it is literally anything, like molten metal, melted like full people in there and stuff like that. You just like the butchers just throw anything in there. There's a cool little passage in the army book that basically says 3 eels attacked him and his 2 guard, and the Lockian prince gets past the guard and the butcher steps aside, chops the eel's head off, and they both fall into the pot. And he's like, I love when the meat comes to me. So it's a really cool idea that they don't care what goes into it. They just sacrifice stuff into it, and that's it. Metal, armor, weapons, boots, whatever. So they eat this stuff and it heals them. But if anyone else eats it,
so what's in yours? What's your lore of the Maw pot? You know, like I imagine mine be like a chicken noodle soup, maybe a little bit of zench in there. What's in your Maw pot?
Mine is all beef, braised beef throughout the whole thing, just because that's my favorite food.
And Doom, what's in yours?
I've got a bit of a Vietnamese combination Maw pot. So a bit of seafood from the old sea elves, bit of chicken from the Zench, bit of beef from a bit of orc in there, a little bit of everything.
Okay. So Mickey, what's the strengths of the army? So if I was going to pick up this book for the first time, I've never played with the ogres. What do they do well?
Oh, that's a tough one because it's weird. Their individual war scrolls, as I said, seem to be stronger than most other individual war scrolls, which is a good thing. But the problem is that allegiance abilities from other armies, especially stuff like war clans and Slaanesh, just absolutely outclass us by so much. But what I've found is if you don't try and like focus on big units or trying to go head to head in a fight, if you actually kind of split your army up into like smaller bits and you almost do like a surgical strike. You know what I mean? Like it's very hard to explain, but I use like a bit of everything. Like I'm running Underguts at the moment, and I have a bit of shooting, a bit of combat, the frost sabers in the back. But there's only like 6 frost sabers in total. But I have little threats all around the board that actually hold their own, and they need more than chaff. Most players only either have chaff or they're big punchy units. So if they send the chaff, they die. If they send the big punchy units, they're wasting their time. So it's great for that. I found that's been my experience so far. I think stuff like Iron Guts, the fact that we got the +1 across the board, Iron Guts are now an absolute powerhouse. Very few units will be able to go toe to toe with them. And if you want to put some serious damage down on an enemy army, just throw 8 Iron Guts into anything. Like 8 Iron Guts into anything, something like a potential 90 damage or something that is huge. So yeah, go on.
No, I was going to say that, you know, one of the strengths that I've noticed is you're an elite army. Obviously, there's ways to build more of a horde version, but you know, if I was someone looking for a low amount of models, you know, I don't want to transport a lot, or I want to work on some big models. I've got that option, and it definitely rewards me to build around that. So I know that's definitely a strength that I would see from this book.
Yeah, and actually one part of their allegiance ability with it, which I think is very underrated. Well, I don't know. I haven't really heard people talk about it much, and that's why I think it's underrated by the community, is their counting as 2 models rule. The amount of times it's not tricked opponents, but like they've forgotten about it halfway through the game. So I had 2 ogres sitting on an objective, and he had 2 hunters on an objective, the Sylvaneth bow hunters. And he was like, "Oh, great, you didn't get my objective." And you know, I was like, "Look again, got 4 models there." And it was a bit of a shock for him. And he's like, "Oh no!" But so it's an elite army that can really, like in an objective-based game, they're actually doing. I'm finding them really strong because they can capture objectives with that ability. They can do a serious amount of damage. Each model does quite a lot of damage. Like a single ogre can do something like 6-7 damage with no buffs on them. So that's pretty cool.
Yeah. Doom, what are the strengths in your opinion?
I just so the low model count army, they do have high damage. They're fantastic at capturing objectives, like Mike just said. They are a low model count army, so they're fun to play with. You never feel like it's a chore pushing your models around the board. That's one of the biggest things for me. But they're really fun to play with because it's like the classic Timmy experience where your few models do really big things. They have a really big effect. So like it doesn't matter if they're good or bad or whatever, but when you play with them and when you roll those dice, because they're all multi-damage, they have that big effect, and you're like, yes, and that was a heap of fun. So, I mean, the ogres have got fundamentally fantastically strong war scrolls, like Mike said as well. They're quite fast. They do high damage. They have Ren. They have no Ren. They have pretty much everything you would need. So, I mean, that's their strengths, really: fast, high damage models. Yeah.
correct me if I'm wrong, you get to play in all of the phases. You've got some shooting, you've got some magic, you've got obviously combat.
Not really. Like you can play in those phases if you choose to. There are different builds which funnel you down those pathways. But if you were to take a broad stroke across the book and you were to look at the majority of the units, both BCR and also ogres, the strength based off their war scrolls and then what you can build on from there is combat, like Stonehorns and Iron Guts and things like that. But you can certainly have a build which pushes you towards Iron Blasters and Lead Belchers, or there'll be few builds that are pushing you towards Thunder Tusks. But like if you wanted to, you could. It's cool. So you can, but I think unless you specifically build to do it, it doesn't. So you're not going to have an army that does all of those things. Like you can't be competitive in magic, competitive in combat, competitive in shooting, and competitive all in the one standard army. It's kind of like pick your route and go down that.
Look, absolutely. And a bit of context around this show, we're going to talk a bit more from a competitive lens. The book has options, and I guess that's what I wanted to call out, was that you can do a shooting list if you wanted to go down shooting. Is it the most optimal? Maybe, maybe not. But you do have some options in all of the phases should you want to go down that path. Or maybe in 6 months' time, if shooting is the real meta and you want shooting in this list, there are some options. But
if you do a shooting army, if that's what you want, and it's important for competitive or fun or whatever your motivations are, that shooting army still fucking fights in combat like a boss, hands down. But the other builds which haven't built the shooting into them, they only just fight, right? Or you've got like magic and fighting, or you've just got fighting, or you've got shooting and fighting. But magic, shooting, and fighting, it's almost impossible to get all of those things in together.
Yeah,
correct.
Geez, wouldn't it be nice to get all of them in one model?
Yeah.
Who do you think we're Gaven?
Yeah, or Feck, or Sornesh. Let's keep going.
Yeah.
I'm not gonna dig at the wound.
Right.
Yeah. But my reason, I've gone underguts, I said, and my reason for doing that is because if you put, and again taking into account allegiance abilities, if you put our army face to face with another army, just clash in the middle, we tend to come off worse because there's so much always strikes first, or the likes of Ironjaw's crushing bulk from the bit, or what's it called? What's the one where he kills a unit and he gets to move on to the next unit fighting?
Mighty Bulk rule, where he charges, kills something, and then keeps going.
Yeah. There's those things. Like I faced an Ironjaw's player, and he did that to 5 of my units, because they got picked off in earlier turns, and all of a sudden he got to fight 5 times. So that's their version of fighting first, I suppose. And then you have Slanesh making the 12 fight last. And you have Feck charging and fighting with 2 dragons twice. So I found that if I didn't soften up the army first, I wasn't able to go toe to toe with them. And the lead belchers actually, I was chatting to one of the guys in the States, in LA, Frank, and he was saying lead belchers are great, and I was like, nope, don't believe you, they suck. But I tried them out at the Mancunian Carnage, and I only tried 8 with a Soul Screen bridge, and they've really worked. The shooting combined with the charging, I think it's the versatility of them that really made them work. The fact that it wasn't just combat, so I was able to, if something was a bit out of my reach, I could shoot them, and then if something was too numerous just to beat in combat, I could shoot them first and then charge them, and soften them up a little bit before I get in. Because especially if stuff's fighting you first, you need to kind of, soften the blow back before you get, because you just lose half your models, if not more, to stuff like Slanesh and all that.
And to be honest with you, I run a lot of shooting based lists, and I know I can't take a punch. If that gets into combat, I am completely screwed. So the fact that this is probably one of the only few options for shooting that can also do a bit of combat damage is not a bad thing. I don't want to go down this rabbit hole around shooting, but I guess there are a lot of different options, which the book could potentially keep you playing for a long time should you want to go down the different routes.
Yeah, I mean, when we get to talking about the different tribes and we get to underguts there, we can go into detail about shooting in the ogres then. But I suppose just to bring it back to what we started on, and I mean, fundamental strengths are multi-wound, multi-damage across the board. Impact hits, you do have a good spread of mortal wounds. You can just about any of your units, Iron Guts, Gluttons, Lead Belchers, Stonehorns, doesn't matter what it is, on the charge, as long as there are no other factors involved, you'll pretty much win that fight. If you charge in and you hit and you get to roll all your dice, you'll blow shit up. And that's where ogres are awesome. So if that's the sort of game that you like to play, where you have big models on the table that do big things, then ogres are for you for sure.
Sign me up. On the flip side, Mike, Doom. I've got two Michaels here. I didn't make my life any easier. But Doom, I know you've picked this book apart. You did an awesome, book review on your channel some time ago. I'd love to know, if I get into this army, what are the weaknesses? Like, what should I expect getting into this book? And what should I be considering when I build my list that I might need to, build around or accept as a limitation?
Well, that's a complicated question, Anthony, but let me just start off by saying, play ogres because you like ogres and you like the faction first. If you're out there and you're looking for something that's going to win you tournaments, and I'm not by this statement saying that ogres can't win tournaments, or I'm not saying that they win all the tournaments. I'm just saying, if you're looking for something that's go-to, that's really, really strong, that's going to just hands down give you an advantage, don't do ogres, right? Because they sit in a pretty healthy place. Play ogres if you really like ogres. And if you do really like ogres, pick them up. And then within the ogre faction, there are 4 or 5 different routes you can go down to, some stronger than others, but all of them can mix it up with the general meta in one way, shape, or form, right? And depending on your matchups and all that sort of things, how lucky you get. So I literally would say, if you like the models and you like the idea of your ogres and you like the idea of that big experience when you play, just start playing them. And it doesn't matter if you start off going Underguts, you start off going Beast Claw, you start off just going Glutton Spam. You will find your way eventually, and all of those different builds can be very strong in their own way. So there aren't really that many traps unless someone's trying to sell you 4 Thunder Tusks, right, from their old army from before. If someone's like, here's 4 Thunder Tusks and 12 Yetis or something like that, well, you might get some use out of the Yetis, but you won't out of the Thunder Tusks. So that would be my only advice to steer clear of, right? 1 Thunder Tusk, okay, 4 Thunder Tusks, maybe not anymore.
Fair enough. Mick, Wendel, what about yourself? What are some of the weaknesses that you're seeing from the book? You're on mute again.
So I'm muting myself because I'm snuffling here as well, and in case I cough, trying to be considerate. But I agree with everything Doom said. They do the stuff like Thunder Tusks. They're not great anymore. They did that thing where instead of just hitting it in one spot, they picked a few key weaknesses of the model and just went, dead, and just ruined the model. I did have something else there. They do have quite a lot of access to stuff like rend and stuff like that. Like they've got Iron Guts at -1 rend. They have Lead Belchers with -1 rend. But there isn't, outside of Frost Lords and like a Tyrant maybe, there's not a lot of damage they can deal through heavy armor. So -1 is roughly all you're really getting unless you're taking a Frost Lord. You have Ribcracker, but the problem is a lot of the ogre spells are cast on a 7, so it's not something you can depend on. So they do struggle against, really struggle against Bone Reapers, for example. Not that that's probably a fair comparison because they are, ridiculous at the moment, but they struggle against that sort of thing where it's like heavy armor, rerolls, or so they do struggle against that. And that's where the likes of utility, you need to start being smart with the army instead. The other thing it says, when you said play ogres for if you love ogres, absolutely agree with that. But one of the reasons I kept playing ogres was to see how well I could do with them. It was kind of like a personal challenge, and I loved it. Like, it was great because the better you did, the more you felt you deserved it. If you're playing more of a mid-tier, kind of like, as you say, a healthy army, one that has a book that's in a good place, so it is nice when you do well with that. But yeah, I would agree. It's not like where it is now externally. It's not like it wouldn't be a top build. It wouldn't be a reliable build that you're going to see on top tables.
I skipped over half of your question. Sorry, Anthony. So the things that they're missing compared to sort of other armies is you've got no after save really throughout the army except for Stonehorn. So you've got no resilience, a 4-up armor save except for your Tyrant and your Stonehorn. And that's why, Stonehorns are some of the best things around at the moment because they have that resilience. You can't get it anywhere else and there's no other spell. So your guys die. If you get hit by anything that does a lot of damage and attacks first, so Flesh-Eater Courts, Daughters of Cain, etc., they just absolutely blend your army. So no save after save. You've got no teleport spell or no ability to teleport around the table as well. That's something that most factions do have. It's like a massive tool. We've got 2 options to ambush. One of them is completely overcosted, and the other one is it's an ambush, but that's it. And you can build into it very heavily. And even if you invest you need to invest like 6 command points to make it even worth your while. So your ambushing is completely limited as well. You don't really have any effective always strikes first. You've got one way to get, you've got one way to get always strikes last, which is probably too hard to really bring to bear. And then you've got no out of sequence combats as well. You've got no fight in the hero phase, no move, no nothing like that Ironjawz, Khorne, all of that sort of have. So if you look at all of the things that make armies like S tier and top tier, which is, out of sequence combats, rerolls on anything, like we don't have rerolls. Like, how do you make your guy reroll to hit? You can't. How do you make him pile in twice? You can't. How do you teleport him across the board to take an objective? You can't. All of that stuff that the top tier armies have. How do you just spew mortal wounds across the table like Skaven could? You can't. You can't do any of those things. So they're the weaknesses of the army. That's the unfortunate of it. We do have a lot of good things, and we probably overcompensate in some other areas, but the whole army is absent all of that. So, that is what it is. It sort of handicapped us. And like Mike said, when you're up against these other armies, you kind of feel like our allegiance ability doesn't compete with what their allegiance abilities are. So that's just a thing. But who cares? Because we love ogres.
That's it. And look, if you're going to win a tournament, you're going to win 4 games, 5 games, you're going to win this event. You're doing it because of skill, not because you've got some janky allegiance abilities and you're pushing them up and, the sheer weight of dice rolling or, some shady rule is going to win you the tournament. So if you do it because of the love, and you do it because you're a good player, not necessarily because it's easy to do. Is that a fair way to wrap this up?
Yeah.
Yeah. It's because you guys are the best generals, and that's why you're here watching this, hearing from the absolute legends that are Doom and Mike Wendel. So we've heard some strengths, we've heard some weaknesses. Let's actually talk about what I get for this allegiance. So I could obviously put these models into a mixed destruction list, but instead I'm going to take Allegiance Mawtribes, or I'm going to take the book. What do I get for this allegiance? And while you guys chat, Mick Wendel, I might throw it over to yourself while I bring up the rules. But what do I get for this allegiance?
Well, you finally get access to a decent set of artifacts and command traits. When I say decent, like we had the mixed destruction ones, but they were fairly muck. Now we do have the malign sorcery stuff, but it's nice to have your own ones to choose from as well. So on the forefront, obviously we get artifacts and command traits. So we have Trampling Charge, which is this is part of the one I was saying, like flavorful abilities. But Trampling Charge, I don't even know if it sounds better on paper than it is in practice, because it's done very little for me lately. I've gotten lucky with it a couple of times, and that's about it. But it's never been reliable. But Trampling Charge, doing your mortal wounds on the charge, rolling dice for the unmodified charge roll. So a cool ability, but a little bit lacking compared to Always Strikes First across the board and Summoning Keepers. Then we have...
So you're doing a mortal wound on a 6. So the rule is, as an ogre or a Rhinox unit makes the charge, you pick one enemy unit within 1 inch of the unit and roll a dice equal to the number of unmodified charge roll for that the charge moved. Add 2 if the unit was an ogre, and made a charge with 8 or more models, or as a monster. For each 6+, the enemy unit suffers 1 mortal wound.
Yeah. So I think they could have actually gone make it a 4+ and a 2+ if it was a monster or 8 or more models, because every other book seems to have a much more reliable allegiance ability, and I'm not sure why this really random allegiance ability that depends on us getting into combat against these things that are much better than us is so hamstrung.
Yeah, I mean, I'll give you an example. So last night, of how this rule works. So last night, my Stonehorn charged into a block of ghouls, right, and did 2 mortal wounds, which he saved both of them, so it did nothing. And then I charged my Slaughtermaster into a Terrorgeist, rolled boxcars, so 12 big dice. This is what we want. Didn't roll a single mortal wound. So this is how this rule sometimes works for you.
You hate to see it.
Just killed me on the inside. I was like, now's my chance. Here we go. Bam.
I know.
Great.
Oh, I got that's this another, like the other one is I was using Blubbergrub Stench, and it just, you're going, oh great, I've got it off, and then you roll 3s for charges.
Yeah.
So it's something we're not going to rely on. It's nice to have, but it's not going to break the bank.
That's right.
Yeah. You don't take it into account when you're making your plans, basically.
Yep.
So what else do I get?
Right, next we've got the Grasp of the Everwinter. At the start of your hero phase, roll 1 dice for each enemy unit within 3 inches of any friendly Beastclaw Raiders units. If the roll is equal to or less than the number of the current battle round, that unit suffers D3 mortal wounds. So this means turn 2 or 3, where you're most likely to be in combat and smashing it up, you have less of a chance of it having any effect at all. But towards the end game, if you still have guys in combat in turn 4 and turn 5, then maybe you'll get that lucky D3 off. And it could be critical, and it could win you the game, because it could free up a unit in the hero phase, and then you can charge off and win the game. Hurrah. Hasn't happened yet, but it could happen. I'm keeping my fingers crossed.
I'm rooting for you.
And another nice little thing to have, but it's certainly not reliable.
Yeah.
Minimal.
Yeah.
Next, we have Might Makes Right. This is my favorite part of the agent's abilities, because it makes us a big contender for objectives now, especially the likes of Stonehorns being 10. So when determining control of an objective, each ogre counts as 2 models instead of 1, and each ogre monster counts as 10 models instead of 1. So that's a big change from when before we all just counted as individual models. And there was a little bit of, I suppose, uproar when people were saying, well, why don't my Stormcast count as 2 models? Listen, you're not an ogre. So I'm pretty happy. Like that's probably the most powerful allegiance ability we have of all of them. That's game winning in certain cases.
Yeah.
Yep, I agree. Yep. And I'll give you an example of, I had a Maw Crusher smash into my line and wreck my face. I had one Iron Gut champion left alive. I could stand around and fight, or I could retreat out of that combat and still hold the objective against because I had it first and there was a Maw Crusher, one other unit in range. My one Iron Gut, because he counts as 2, keeps it from the Iron Gut, from the Maw Crusher. So it's like, yes, yep. So it is a really, really super strong rule, especially for BCR with the monsters.
Yeah.
Love it. And it's worth noting that if the battle plan doesn't follow the normal rules for holding an objective, that particular trait isn't used. However, the Ogor Mawtribes model is still eligible to count as multiple models during the battle, so definitely do check out, depending on which battle plans you're using. So relocating orb is one that they've called out in this battle trait.
Yeah.
Good. Next up, we've got Ravenous Brutes. So this is a fantastic rule as well, and very thematic. If I'm an ogre, which I am, I'm either hungry or I'm eating, which is also very true. So if I'm hungry, I'm outside of 3 inches from enemy units. That's just going to give me +2 to my movement because I'm hungry and I want to get into combat so I can start eating. And then once I'm in combat and I'm smashing face, that means I'm eating and I'm getting +2 to my bravery, because I'm happy because I'm killing my enemy and I'm eating. So this takes ogres, foot ogres, from base move from 6 to 8. Makes them very fast. It's actually only 2 inches, but it makes a significant difference. And it also means that battle shock is not as big a concern for us as it previously was.
And I'm going to ask, do you guys have to cosplay this? Do you actually legitimately have to be eating at the table? Do the dice rolls get better, or you guys haven't tested it yet?
I've had an ogre in my car, and it did go faster, but I haven't tried eating at the table yet, so I'll let you know.
All right, I want to see someone with like a big turkey leg, like at the gaming table. Just don't touch my models.
I was eating a bacon sandwich in my game 3 of or game 4 of Mancunian Carnage, and I won that. So maybe it was because of the bacon sandwich.
There's something in that.
Yeah.
The next one, Mick Wendel, you've got the Everwinter prayers.
Yeah, so each Beastclaw Raiders priest in an Ogor Mawtribe army know one Everwinter prayer from the manifestations of the Eternal Snowstorm table, in addition to other prayers they know. So they can chant one Everwinter prayer a turn, and I don't think they can duplicate them.
No.
Yeah, so each prayer can only be done once per turn. So they're basically, it looks like they're consistently fixing the prayer phase now with books. So the prayers are okay, but you have to build around them.
Yeah.
Like there's one that really helps Mournfang, and there's ones that just I've have to be honest. I looked at the prayers at the first time, and they didn't really.
So the prayers are pretty lackluster, mainly because base they go off on a 4+, so almost impossible for them to reliably go off at all. And their effect is really quite minimal for the large part. It's bringing back one Yeti. It's doing D3 mortar wounds, or and I've forgotten the other one. There are a few ways with the different battalions or the tribes, I should say, that you can add to that. So you're actually getting +1 to your prayer, and you still get +1 to your prayer for having multiple Huskguards on Thunder Tusk, but they're so bad, and the prayers just aren't, like, adding the prayers onto that model still doesn't make it anywhere worth investing into at all. So we can largely skip the prayers, I think, for the moment, unfortunately.
Not a strategy you build around.
It's just too expensive points wise. There's not reliable. If it was something like, okay, each Huskguard on Thundercast can do 2 prayers, and if he's standing near the cauldron, like the corn altar, he can re-roll those, then you might go, okay, great, there's something I can do here. But you can't, so you don't.
Yeah.
Correct. There's one before. What was the next ones are? So the different Mawtribes, just like the temples and chambers and stuff, and all in the other books, we got Meat Fist, which are your kind of your poster boys for ogres. They're just your take ogres basically, and smash face. You got Blood Gullet, which focus on magic. You have Underguts, which focus on black powder weapons. Boulder Head, which is kind of pushing you towards the Stonehorn spam. So big dudes. The Thunderbellies, which is a Mournfang based Mawtribe, and Winterbite, which is a Yeti and Frostsaber based Mawtribe. I haven't, other than Underguts and maybe Boulderhead if you're going that way, I haven't found much absolute need to include a Mawtribe in your army from what I've been looking at. Even if I went magic, I don't think I'd go Blood Gullet, because there's better command traits and artifacts than the ones that you are forced to take in Blood Gullet. So the idea that you have to take one of these sub factions, like, definitely you shouldn't feel like you have to take them. I think there's better opportunities with the different command traits. There's one command trait that gives you D3 command points per turn that a hunter is in reserve, and you need to consider that, like the effect that those book command traits are going to have compared to the ones that are forced into you in the Mawtribes.
Okay, so it's an option. So this is not a mandatory thing. I can go the generic Mawtribes book and choose my own command traits, my own artifacts, or I have 6 choices to choose from should I want to go down. And obviously I'm forced to take a command trait, I'm forced to take an artifact, and there are some other things that I get from it, but certainly it's not a mandated thing.
Correct. Yeah. Kind of just take whatever suits you. Undergut suits me at the moment because I was actually playing triple Iron Blaster in the mixed destruction based ogres back before we got the book, so I said I'd continue it on anyway, and they've actually proven quite good. The two, I wouldn't take Iron Blasters outside of Underguts. I'd take Lead Belches outside of Underguts, but not Iron Blasters.
Yeah. You also get a terrain piece. You guys have alluded to this a few times. This thing called the Morpot. Doom, can you tell me a bit more about what's the Morpot? What's the use for it? Why am I taking this terrain piece?
Well, you set it up more than 12 away from enemy territory. 1 away from terrain, and 6 from an objective. So you're quite restricted in where you place it. It's arcane for your butchers if you have a if you have a wizard within 1 inch of it. So very tight to that Maw pot as well. And then it starts off full. Once per game, you can unleash the pot, drink the broth, explode the gut magic, and it's like 36 inches, heal D3 to all of your different units. Then if you kill an enemy model within 6 inches of it, it fills up again. So normally what happens is you put this down, you can't put it as close to your base objective as you'd like. You want to try and put one of your butchers right on it because you want that +1 to cast, which means like you're dictating where he goes based off the terrain as well, as opposed to your sort of troops. And then once the game starts, you get 1 round of casting out of it, and then you pretty much move away because your slaughtermasters and your butchers and things generally want to be up supporting your troops. So it has to a large point, very little effect on the game. But you can also just sit next to that Maw pot, summon a Balewind Vortex, and stand next to it and cast off it all day long as well, if you like as well. But you're in this constant state of turmoil where you're like, shit, I really want my butcher up the table because all of your buffs and your spells are wholly within buffs, right? So you're like, I really need him to be wholly within of my unit so that he can buff what he wants when he wants, unless it's rib cracker. So you're sort of like, I'm not very impressed by it. Like it has not a lot of use for me. I get one spell at +1, and then my wizard's like off doing what he needs to do elsewhere for the most part. So like if you're building a magic heavy army where you have multiple wizards, you can have the Slaughtermaster with the pot like up near your guys, and then something sitting back, like fine. But and it's hard to get enemies within 6 inches of it as well. Like it might happen. I've had 10 games of the book now, and I think in one of those games we end up fighting around the pot. So that's the terrain piece. It's a very cool looking piece. Like it's excellent, and it's cool for the ogres, but a little bit lackluster, unfortunately, I think.
For that one particular battle where you did fight around the pot, was that coming from like an alpha strike, deep striking type of army, or it just happened later in the game?
No, that's Iron Jaws, where they just hit me turn 1, like right on my main sort of area that I built up around, and we just brawled on that. I mean, everything was dead in 2 turns. Yeah. Everything's dead in 2 turns, right? Ogres and Iron Jaws just like smash each other into pieces. It's like an explosion. So I didn't get that much use out of it still, but I was like, oh wow, I can actually use this thing because I'm here.
So I'm hearing the Maw pot's nice to buff maybe in the first turn, but certainly you either building a strategy around it with the Umbral Spell Portal and the Balewind Vortex, or it's just that once per battle type of initiative, and then you're moving away, as you said, to keep your guys in range of their buffs.
Yeah, that's my experience with it so far.
Yeah. Mick, Wendel, similar experience, or have you found a different way of using the Maw pot?
Different experience, but I would largely agree with what he said. It is quite inconsequential in the game. Now, because I play Underguts, I do tend to sit back and play a counterpunch instead, because a lot of the times you're not doing the damage that they can do. So, what I actually found I started doing was trying to get the Maw pot to a position where my butcher beside the Maw pot would be within 18 inches of objectives and stuff like that. So being an objective-based game, if I can make sure that enemies jumping on those objectives are within range of Ribcracker, then I can send my Lead Belchers over there, my Iron Guts over there, whatever, hit them with the -2 basically, and it really devastates them. But I know if I played a more combat-based army, I would have the exact same experience as Doom. The Slaughtermasters have to keep up. Your army is fast, so it will get out of range quite quickly. If on turn 1 you just move 8 inches with a unit of Iron Guts, then charge all of a sudden you're 15 inches away from the back line first of all, but then piling in, getting away, you'll be out of range by the next turn. So he is right. You have to just run up with that butcher, and you just after turn 1 it's gone, and you can only activate the pot if you've got a hero within I think 3 inches of it or something like that. So it's not even, you can't even just activate it if no one's there.
No. So your butcher, not your and this is we'll go into this later, I guess, but your Slaughtermaster is different to your butcher because he has a pot that you can reach in to get a random buff that has very short buff ranges. So if you only have a slaughter master, you always want to push him forward. And for sometimes this is my only argument for why you take a butcher over a slaughter master, and that is that the butcher with rib cracker on the Balewind Vortex is awesome. The rib cracker is 18 inches. There's no wholly within restrictions, and he's got the Maw, which is a damage spell as well. So if you have a butcher, he is like the perfect wizard to stand on a Balewind and cast rib cracker and the Maw every single turn at +1. But as soon as you take that slaughter master, which you want to for the pot, you're just like, oh shit, this is a conflict here.
Yeah. The pot's really good. The pot, I think the pot's like 14 or 16 inch range, and yet you need them. He needs to be hugging your units to make sure they don't run out of range.
Yep.
So Maw pot is good. It's got an optional benefit that you can use once per battle. Certainly, again, do you build around the strategy of your terrain piece? Probably not as effective as some of the other armies, but it does have some use.
Yeah.
Awesome. All right. Well, we've kind of talked about the allegiance. We've talked about some of the things that you're going to get by going Mawtribes as opposed to going Grand Alliance Destruction. And certainly, if you want to go down this build, you can definitely put your models into Destruction. But I would like to start building a list based on your expertise. So, chatting with some of the fine folks, for example, I had a conversation recently with Nighthaunt, and they were saying to me that you always start with that sub allegiance, that for Daughters of Cain, it's the same kind of thing. Where do I start in this particular book when I start building a list? Do I start it at these sub allegiances? Do I start with my hero choices, or is battle line more of the initial focus?
You start with the tribes first, but you will find that you want to move away from them. So this is probably the biggest point of discussion in the whole book, because depending on what flavor tribe you go, it will depend on what flavor army that you have. Okay, so that if you want to go, okay, I just want to take heaps of ogres, heaps of gluttons, and I want to run across the table and I want to smash everyone's face, I want to buff that up. The Blood Gullet tribe pushes you towards taking a glutton heavy army, right? Because it has a command ability built into it, which makes them do like a ton more damage. Really, really good. Makes all of your wizards double casters as well. You want to have those in your army anyways. And so if you, like, wherever you start building your army, whatever tribe you pick is going to determine what that army looks like to a large extent. So if that's what you like tickles your fancy, then go for it, because gluttons can be very point effective. And so you can just run those and smash face with magic in a Blood Gullet's army. If you like Underguts, if you like, Lead Belchers, and you like Iron Blasters and things like that, like Underguts is the only way to go, right? So you take that buffs your shooting, and then that sort of fills out your list naturally as you go from there as well. Boulder Head is all about, like, if you want to play with monsters, you just take Boulder Head, because Boulder Head gives them all a mount trait, right? Instead of just having one. So again, you go, okay, well, this tribe gives me this benefit, so I may as well lean into it by having more monsters. And Winterbite is the same for Yetis and so forth. So that's where you start. And then as you play, you will sort of add your own flavor into it, and you'll find that you have weaknesses. So if you just play a Blood Gullet spam army with magic, you find very quickly that I've got very little rend in my army, and I can't just bludgeon my way across through every army in every tournament and win. Against some, it works fine. Others, you can't. So you think, okay, well, now I need to start adding things in, and that's where it becomes complicated, and that will probably lead you to the path of no tribe. But I think that's a path you have to take, like yourself. You have to sort of learn that, and then you'll find it as you go. But definitely, like, start here. The tribe will dictate largely what you're going to put in your list, and start there and then build out from there.
So if I did a helicopter view maybe of all six, maybe I'll get like some little, elevator pictures, or maybe just some high level views on what you guys think. So the first one in the book is certainly the Meat Fist. Some of the abilities you're going to get is you can roll one additional dice when a Meat Fist unit uses the Trampoline Charge battle trait. And the command ability is you can use the command ability at the start of your combat phase. If you do so, pick one friendly Meat Fist unit until the end of that phase. Add one to the tax characteristics of friendly Meat Fist, Ogre, Glutton units. from the gulping bite if they're wholly within 18.
Just forget about that whole tribe. Don't worry about it.
Okay. Yep. So we're not a fan of the meat fist.
No, it's a waste.
Just bloat. Doesn't do anything.
Yep.
Is there any and again, guys, just for context for people who are listening to this, this is very much from a competitive point of view. You build what you want to build, hobby the way you want to hobby. If you love a particular unit, please don't let us stop. But if you're certainly looking at having a really strong tournament performance, or you want to win an event, we're looking a bit more strategic at this.
No, even if you just want to play with your mates and just have fun with your mates and things like that, then you would still never take Meat Fist. You would only take Meat Fist if you literally read the lore and you were like, you know what, I love having ogre tribes painted with one red fist, and so that's me, and that's what I'm all about. And then cool, you do you, it's fine. But it doesn't matter if you're competitive or you're not competitive or whatever else. There's probably very little reason that you will ever take Meat Fist anyways. Which is sad because they're actually the strongest. From a lore perspective, let's talk about what's good about Meat Fist. The lore, they're actually the strongest ogre tribe in the whole realms, supposedly, but they have the worst rules, so that's a shame. But they are the most numerous, they are the most dominant, and they do fight against Boulder, who is the most numerous and most dominant BCR tribe out there as well. So it's Meat Fist and Boulder are constantly clashing. So if you wanted to narratively recreate that, okay, make your army, paint them red, take them as Meat Fists. Sweet, that'll be cool. But you could just paint your blood gullets with red fists as well, and you'd be fine.
All right. So what I'm hearing from the crew is Meat Fist not really one that you should be choosing unless if you really insist on going Meat Fist. There's only one actual thing in the army that makes it stand out, and that's by stacking the likes of the Unstoppable Feast on a unit with Blood Feast and the command ability from, I think, a Butcher or Slaughtermaster, which makes 6s to hit with their bites, mortal wounds, and heals, and that's 36 attacks.
It's the Rock Chomper base spell that's on the Slaughtermaster War Scroll.
That's it, yeah.
It goes off on a 5, and then it's 6s to wound on the bites, does a mortal wound. If you do the Blood Feast buff as well as the Meat Fist buff from the thing, you're going to have 3 bites per ogre. So if you run lots of, say, Ogre Bulls, for example, which are the cheapest way to get the most bites, and like Mike said, 1 unit of 12 Ogre Bulls is going to have 36 bites, which is 3s and 3s, no rend, 1 damage, and then 6s are mortal wounds on the 6 to wound. But that's that's the
combo.
That's it.
You're stacking, and it's just when you're depending on a combo that requires that many inputs, because if one of those goes wrong, you've just wasted it almost.
You've got nothing. You're just left with your red fist. That's it.
Yeah, you got your red fist, and that's all that matters. You've got your Blood Gullet, which is going to the ability. The Blood Gullet Butcher knows one extra spell from the Lore of the Gut magic. In addition, friendly Blood Gullet Butchers can attempt to cast 1 extra spell in the hero phase. Your command ability, start of the combat phase. If you do so, pick 1 friendly Blood Gullet Butcher. Until the end of the phase, you can re-roll wound rolls for attacks made by melee weapons by friendly Blood Gullet Gluttons that are within 12 of the Butcher. What do we think of the Blood Gullets?
So my favorite part about this one is the command trait, which is the extra 3-inch pylon. So when you have big 40 mil bases, you need that extra reach to get into the fight sometimes. So that's probably, to me, the most appealing part of this particular Maw tribe. The extra spells, it's decent because we are casting on 7s, but it's nice to have that extra, if this spell doesn't go off, maybe one of the other 3 will go off at least, So you're just adding extra chances. Not having any sort of +1s to cast or any bonuses or rerolls or anything is kind of a kicker, but extra with the Maw tribe, but just getting the extra spell. I think I just prefer +1s to cast because you can get the extra spells from the likes of Balewind and some artifact. I think there's an artifact that lets you do an extra spell as well. And then Bloodbath, again, it's focusing on gluttons only. It would have been nice if they just had a unit of ogres because it's wholly within 12 as well. It's so restricting. So you're not only is it only the probably one of the weakest units in your army, in my experience and opinion. But also, your opponent knows exactly where your Slaughtermaster or Butcher is going to be, because you're just going to be following them within 12 inches all the time. And then when they charge off, a charge will normally take you out of that 12-inch bubble. So it means you have to wait a turn before you get back in, unless you're smart and you let them come to you, or not smart and let them come to you, but unless you're able to orchestrate it so that you can stay within 12. But it's very difficult.
So Blood Gullet, not that great.
No, I disagree with Mike on this one. Blood Gullet, I think, is one of the strongest tribes in the book, only because, okay, like I said before, they all push you down a certain route, right? So they focus on you.
Mm-hmm.
If you want to run 2 units of 12 Gluttons, because you like the points effectiveness of them, then this is the faction that you take, because the 6-inch pile-in, like Mike said, along with the command ability to reroll all failed wounds, makes Gluttons on the charge with their exploding 6s, the damage is huge. So if you want to, and plus you get the extra cast. So like Mike said, you have 4 chances, if you got 2 wizards, 4 chances of getting a spell off. They go off on 7s. So it's like your lucky dip, right? And you only need 1 to go off for things to go really quite good. I've taken this tribe a lot, and you can beat your opponent to death. If they are just a straightforward army that wants to get in a fight with you and you're running Blood Gullet and Glutton Heavy, you'll smash the shit out of them. But as soon as they start to bring in tricks, teleportation, ambushing units, what, like all the strong armies have, you find yourself like you've got one trick, and that is beating your opponent to death, which is what you want to do as an ogre. But and Blood Gullet does that really, really well. But that's where you're limited. You've got no shooting. You've got nothing like that. So, and what I would say is that with Blood Gullet, if you go to a large tournament, you can literally be extremely low drop, 3 drops with a Gorman battalion or something like that, max out on Blood Gullets, give your opponent the first turn, and just run through, because you might get, 4 Iron Jaws in a row. You never know what you're going to get. Your chances are it's probably going to work out fairly favorable for you. But you'll find very quickly that you don't have the tools to answer all the questions that you're going to come up against. And so it's really, really strong. And also the command ability as well. It's at the start of the combat phase. So you've kind of like, you move up. Ideally, you want to move up 3 inches away, run your guy up, charge in, and then you use it. And like you can get it off quite a lot. It is good, and it actually can be very strong, but it's just very restrictive, and that's all I'd say. And you'll come up against some matches that you have no chance against, but you come up against other matches where you table your opponent in like so quickly, especially on that double turn with 2 units of 12 ogres with the magic. So I think it's very strong, but I think it's very one-dimensional.
Yeah. Yep. I really like the additional 3-inch pile-in. If the friendly unit starts the pile-in move wholly within 12 inches of the general. So yeah. That's a nice little trick in the activation wars, especially. I like that.
So this is where I started, because it's very much how I used to run my ogres pre-book. So I started here, and this is like, if you want to learn the foundations of ogres and learn how to like play the army and then play out and develop, Blood Gullets is a fantastic place to start, especially if you were just a brand new player to Age of Sigmar. You're looking at an army. Because you're picking up everything that you're going to take in this army, and everything that goes in the battalion that fits with it as well comes in like the start collecting boxes and things like that. So it's a very quick army to pick up, very quick army to learn, and then you can literally just say, okay, the army is lacking this, buy those and add them in and build out from there. So I've had about 8 games of Blood Gullet. It's excellent, but it's just, sorry to repeat myself, but it's just limited.
No, it's good to reinforce the point. You've got your undergullets, so your underguts. Some of those key benefits you're going to get is the gun masters, where lead belcher guns used by the underguts. Lead belchers have a range characteristic of 18 instead of 12. The command ability, pick at start of the shooting phase, pick a friendly underguts hero. At the end of that phase, add 1 to the attack characteristics of melee weapons used by the friendly iron blasters, wholly within 12 of that hero. You can only use this command ability once per shooting phase. And then you've obviously got a command trait and a artifact of power. thoughts on the Underguts? Either of you run it recently, or got some general thoughts around this one?
Underguts are my action. It's what I'm running at the moment. It's what I ran at Mancunian Carnage there last week, a couple of weeks. Was it last weekend? Yeah. I think that Underguts are the only faction you're kind of forced into if you want to play a particular way. Because everything else you can, like, if you want to go what was the one called? Blood Gullet it does enhance your gluttons a lot, but you're not forced to play it to make the gluttons good. It just makes them better. Whereas if you want to play Iron Blasters and Lead Belchers, you kind of have to play Underguts, because otherwise they just don't do anything. Iron Blasters with one attack apiece it's sad to watch them play, because they are hitting on 4s and they lost their reroll against big units. But I have been playing with it, and even though the command trait subtract 1 from wound rolls for missile attacks that target the general, it doesn't seem that impactful, but I've actually got quite a good bit of use out of it. It's usually my Tyrant running around with the Iron Blasters, and he hides behind the 3 Iron Blasters, so the only way to get to him is with shooting or magic. And I've actually had the -1 to wound really help a lot. And the Noblar Blast Keg, it's a nice little trick if you throw it on a hunter. A hunter with some dogs maybe in the background, but even just a hunter on his own, he can come in and pick big blocks of units do a few mortal wounds. But it's the Noblar Blast Keg is actually an interesting one. It says add 1, so once per battle at the start of your shooting phase, you can use the Noblar Blast Keg. If you do, pick 1 enemy unit within 9 inches of the bearer that is visible to them and roll 6 dice. Add 1 to each roll for every 10 models in the target unit. So against 10 models, it's 5+. Against 20 models, it's 4+. So when I first read it, I thought it was every additional 10 models, like 20 would be 5+. So that's kind of cool. Like there's a lot of 30-man units out there, 20-man units. So likely is you get it on a 4+. So it's a nice way of doing a few mortal wounds, which we don't have a lot of access to. The big power is obviously the Gunmaster's ability and the Thunderous Salvo. So Gunmaster is giving us the 18-inch range, means they can be a threat earlier in the game. And I actually use the Screaming Bridge with them, because when they move, their D6 shots go down to D3 for the Lead Belchers. So you can use the Screaming Bridge to get them you can move them...
12?
I'm just trying to think of it. I think it's about 16 inches in total you can get them forward, the furthest you can get them forward. Because if you deploy them on the front line and put the bridge down, then the other bridge down, I think you get about 16, 18 inches out of it. And then you've got an 18-inch range. So you got a nice 36-inch threat range. And if you want to send let's say you want to go kill a character, you can send the Tyrant through with them and give it +1 to hit the character. So you're negating that -1 from Lookout Sirs. And it's just a nice little way of, almost tricking or sniping. So I usually set up where I'm either going to transport the Iron Blasters for a long bomb shot, which is less common than me using it for the Lead Belchers, because the Lead Belchers still get the D6 shots. So I set it up usually so that I can cast it on either the Iron Blasters or the Lead Belchers. But the 18-inch range really makes them a big threat, because people have to play safer with their characters now, because there's a lot of variance in the D6 shots. So you could get 50 shots, or you could get 12. You're not really. They can't hope that you do bad, and you're going to give it a shot no matter what. So they have to play defensively, and that's what I noticed at Mancunian Carnage. Players were putting their valuable characters in very defensive positions and leaving like a turn of buffing units out so that they could keep them safe. So it adds that threat range. It really adds a good threat range, and it makes them play a bit more defensively, which means we get longer to kind of play around the board. And then similarly with the Iron Blasters, having +1 attack on 3 or 4 cannons that all do D6 damage with -2 rend, it can be scary for them. So I was actually using Burning Head for a while, so I was hitting on 3s against characters rerolling 1s, and that was actually doing really well. The worst is when you have that 1 dice roll and you roll a 1 for damage, though. Still nothing worse than rolling a 1 for damage. But as I said, they can't depend on a bad roll. If they're going to go forward, they're going to risk it and make it easier for you. If they hold back, they make it harder for you, but they're holding back so you have a little bit more control.
Yep. And I imagine the massive scars, which is at subtract 1 to the wound rolls for attacks made by missile weapons that target this general, that combines nicely with Lookout Sir, so your general's -1 to hit and -1 to wound against them. Obviously, if you bring a hero with the Iron Guts, the Lead Belchers, and you got a command point up your sleeve, you could certainly re-roll ones if you didn't have the Burning Head. So nice little way to bring that strong shooting to the list if you want to go down that route, which kind of Michael had alluded to earlier of going down that path. Do many thoughts for yourself on Underguts?
I have very strong thoughts on Underguts. This is one of my biggest frustrations for the book. So all I'll say is that the shooting is okay, right? It's the best we've got, right? And it is shooting, so excellent. That's that. But I mean, like Mick was saying, you'd never take an Iron Blaster if it was outside of this. Like the War Scroll is trash in the nicest way until you take it in this, and then you add a battalion, and then you add gruesome trophy rack, and then you spend a command point, and then the shooting becomes okay on the Iron Blasters, right? So it's like, it's such a frustration because you really need this in your army. You really need it. And then you're like, but why do I have to pay so much to get this, right? For it to be only okay. Okay, if I spend all of that and it's like amazing, but it's not. It's just ordinary. So it's one of my biggest frustrations with the book is that it is built this way. All I would say about, so Underguts is the next tribe I'm going to do. I'm running, done Blood Gullets for about 10 games. I'm on Boulder Head at the moment. And then after CanCon's over, for my next tournament, I'll be switching to Underguts. And another thing I'll say about this tribe is that you read this and you want to take Lead Belchers. A lot of people out there have very differing opinions on Lead Belchers. If you go on the Facebook page, for example, and you do a post, what's better, Gluttons or Lead Belchers, right? You're going to get screamed at by 1,000 different people who have gone through this 27 different times. And there are some people who, like Mike was saying, like he's used his Lead Belchers. They've performed really well for him. They're really versatile, and they've had this effect on the opponent's psychology. They've really worked for him. I've taken them in every single army now, and I would never take them again, right? That's from my personal experience. But that doesn't really mean anything. All I'd say about this is that depending on how you feel about Lead Belchers, you can play the Underguts with the Iron Blasters and still just put your Gluttons in or your Iron Guts, right? And have your Skull, have your Ambushing Hunter, and just take advantage of the Iron Blasters, and it's fine. So I just don't want people to look at Underguts and think that, if I never want to play this because I have to play Lead Belchers. Like, you don't. You could very easily just not put them in there, take the other units, and still get the advantage. So I think Underguts is secretly one of the most competitive builds that we have, not because the shooting in it is particularly strong, but simply just because it has shooting.
Yeah. Fair point. So those 3 tribes that we've gone through are the Gutbuster tribes. Is that correct? And then the other 3, we're going to move into more of the Beast Claw Raiders type of tribes. Cool. And obviously, if we want to have a bit of a combo, or you don't want to take these, obviously the choice is to not take one at all. So I guess the first one that's more aligned to the Beast Claw Raiders is the Boulder Head tribe. A couple of things it's going to give you is certainly you can add 1 to the prayer roll for the Hailstorm when the Boulder Head priest is chanting that prayer. The command ability allows you at the start of any phase, pick 1 friendly Boulder Head hero that has a mount until the end of that phase. Use the top row of that unit's damage table, regardless of how many wounds it suffered. And then it has a command trait and it has the artifacted power. Thoughts on Boulder Head?
So the one there that you missed is that you add 1 wounds to all of your monsters in your army, and you can also they can all take a mount trait. So the reason you take this, almost solely the reason that you take that, is for that first ability, the Fearsome Breed, to be able to give all of your heroes the extra mount trait, because there are probably really only 3 that are fairly strong and worthwhile taking. That's the Black Clatterhorn, which has given you +1 to hit on your Stonehorn's horns, which normally hit on a 4, and that will take them down to a 3. The Metal Cruncher, which is at the start of the combat phase. Every combat phase, if you're in combat with an enemy that has a 4 or lower armor save, you roll a dice and you do like that many mortal wounds to them straight up. So that's your turn and their turn. And then there's Alvgar Ancient as well, which is for your Thunder Tusk, which is the always strikes last. So you really take Boulder Head so that you can try and have a double Stonehorn with both the Metal Cruncher build and also the Black Flutter Horn. So the Metal Cruncher build is called the Crunch Horn, right? So this is a Crunch Horn. The other one is called a Murder Horn because it fucking murders everything, and that's with the Black Clatter Horn and also the Brand of the Svard, which is the artifact, which gives them another +1. So he hits on 2s. So that's sort of where you go with the Boulder Head, and you can take the double Stonehorn, flesh it out with just your foot guts if you wanted to, or you can take your Thunder Tusk with your Alvgar Ancient in there if you want to. The one thing I'll just say that we haven't really mentioned is that for both the Underguts and the Boulder Head, you're always going to have to take a battalion with them to get the second artifact, to get the builds on the things that you want. And this is another one of the frustrations, is that it pushes you to build down this way, but then to complete it, you really want to take that battalion. So I'd be suggesting that for most Boulder Head, you're probably going to see a Skull, which is taken, which is a Hunter and Saber-tooth cats. It fills out your battle line. It's very cheap. It also brings in the utility of ambushing. So now you have the battalion, you have the screens, you have the ambushing, and then you have the second artifact for your Stonehorn. So Boulder Head is really quite strong, and at the moment it's actually the best, probably the best match that we have for Ossiarch Bone Reapers at the moment, because 2 Stonehorns, a Metal Cruncher, and a Murder Horn will have their way with blocks of Mortarch Guard. So that's nice. And if you think about people like Michael Thompson and Zenith Mills up in Cairns there, Michael Thompson, absolutely fantastic death player. They've been running this Boulder Head against Ossiarch Bone Reapers a lot, and Boulder Head's walking through them. I know Chris Welfare's been tweeting about his games with Liam at the moment as well, running Boulder Head against Liam's Ossiarch and Chris smashing him. And so
I think they've had 2 games. I think there's been 2 smashing. So
yeah. Well, no, but that's to say this tribe in particular is a really good counter for Ossiarch Bone Reapers or high armor army. So Ossiarch Bone Reapers, Stormcast Eternals, Boulder Head are a go-to for that. But you can take your double Stonehorn. You can still have all the other things. So I really like it. This is where I'm going for CanCon.
And let me put this on the record that I'm happy and sad to see the return of the Stonehorn. I remember it being absolute monster in 2017, 2018. It then got a complete smash in the face. It got completely nerfed. Everyone went into the other build, the Thunder Tusks. Now we are back with Stonehorns, and I'm looking forward to seeing them wreck face as much as more Crushers, maybe probably even more. But really good point out, because people are freaking out about Ossiarch Bone Reapers right now. This is a wonderful counter to their high armor. And correct me if I'm wrong, Doom, that D6 damage are mortal wounds. Is that correct?
Yes.
Yeah.
For the Metal Cruncher, yeah.
Yeah, for Metal Cruncher.
So you have your mortal wounds on the charge. If you get any, then you Metal Crunch and then you attack. Or alternatively, you're attacking with your horns, which are -2 rend on the Murder Horn. And so that's all just good damage that you're going to get through. But let's not have no illusions. I charged my Murder Horn into ghouls last night and killed 10 of them. Right? That's it. On the charge, with impact hits, with everything. So, don't have any illusions that this is the answer to everything and it's truly going to just win all your games against OBR. You're still going to charge in. You're still going to whiff. You're still going to get stuck by those 5-up after saves of other armies and things like that. But, an ethereal Stone Cruncher or something like that, they can do a lot of damage.
Wendel, anything you'd want to add to that?
Yeah, definitely. It's funny he mentioned the build that people were looking at was when I was looking at building a more focused Beastclaw Raiders force. The first thing that came to mind was double Frostlord and a Skal battalion, and that's literally it's the starting point, because you're just brought into that. You don't really have much of an option. I've seen some people play with Mournfang and stuff like that, but they are very expensive, and you do need bodies on the board for. If anything, just for screens and for zoning other people. One of the big things is people teleporting across the board or summoning trees. One thing I always try and do is try and limit to where they can go. So if they do cast those spells, they're not going anywhere that I give a shit about. the other thing about the Boulderhead mod, this is the Boulderhead mod tribe. Maybe realize one thing about the tribes, that the mod tribes abilities aren't for armies; they're for particular units you choose. So like Underguts, they're only for Iron Blasters. I wouldn't even say they're for Lead Belchers. They only give them a slight buff. Like I agree with what he said earlier. Lead Belchers are not needed in Underguts. I found myself particularly fond of them after I used them. That's all. In Boulderhead, you could literally just take 2 Frost Lords and then go Gormand if you wanted. Take a load of Ogre stuff. Because you're getting the benefit, a very strong benefit of Boulderhead if you just take like 2 Frost Lords or 2 of the beasts. The extra wound, 2 Frost Lords, that's 14 wounds each, 3+ saves and 5+ mortal wound saves. They become formidable just alone. And then you could take hordes of ogres as well on top of that. I actually really like the Dig Deep Your Heels command ability, because right down to the last breath, they can be a massive threat. One of my things with the Underguts is to, like, for example, if I'm fighting a Keeper of Secrets or anything that has degrading damage, I try and pick it off with damage, and then when it's down to 3 or 4 wounds, I can charge in. I'm not going to get bashed by it, but with this, you are going to get bashed by it because it's just a command point and fuck you up. So that's really it's a really cool ability.
Yeah, it's actually an exceptional ability. I really like that one. And thank you for picking that up as well, Doom, around the Fearsome Breed. I certainly skipped that when I was looking at Deadly Hail. But there's some really good stuff in here. And as you mentioned it earlier, people are playing with this particular list, and they are doing quite well so far. We've got the Thunder Bellies Mawtribe. Again, a couple of benefits here. We've got the Thunder Bellies Mournfang pack. Units wholly within 12 of the edge of the battlefield at the start of the charge phase can charge in that charge phase, even if they ran at the same turn. Add 1 to the prayer rolls for Keening Gale when the priest is chanting that prayer. And there's a bunch of other stuff around the Rip and Tear command ability. You've got an artifact and traits. Given that the last one, the Boulder Head, is so strong, how do we compare that against the Thunder Bellies?
I think
I want to hear Michael say he's very famous.
Hot garbage. No, all I'll say is they're hanging out with the Meat Fist, right? The Meat Fist and the Thunder Bellies, they're hanging out with Nigel No Friends, right? That's about it.
Do you see a world, in any world other than the narrative world, that you really love this?
This is meant to be run with Mournfang, right? This is like someone's idea of let's make one for Mournfang where it's cool. Except really, there's a Mournfang battalion which is good, and you'd run that in Boulderhead, and everything's better. So just don't worry about it.
Don't worry about it. No world where this particular one is useful at this present.
Not really.
All right. I'm just trying to protect my ass in like 6 months' time. Maybe there's some meta shift where this is amazing, but now we don't see a use for it.
I guarantee you, someone is going to take Thunderbelly's tribe with a bunch of Mournfang in like a Yolbat or Jawbat or whatever, where they're doing mortal wounds per 6, and he's going to say, you know what? I ran my Mournfang straight up the flanks. They ran and then they charged into my enemy, and I got like 8 mortal wounds on the charge, and then I just absolutely killed him, and it was amazing. You know, you guys are jokers, but it's going to be anecdotal, at best. You know, it's going to happen. Like, I went into my local Games Workshop. My Games Workshop manager, who's a legend, just goes, "Oh, how good a Mournfang!" And I was like, "Oh, fucking hell, are you kidding me?" He goes, "Yeah, I just run him across the table, turn 1, and get my enemy's face." And I was like, "Okay, well, like he might run Thunderbellies, and it might be awesome." But my advice would actually, no. All right, I'll take it all back. In my opinion, I don't think it's a very strong tribe. However, I'm often wrong. So if you have a lot of success with this tribe and I'm completely missing something, please send me a message and let me know, and then I'll share it with everyone, and we can all benefit from that knowledge as well.
Awesome. And rub it in, take pictures and get videos and rub it in. And both Mick, Wendel and Doom of Darkness's Twitter handles are in the show description as well. So please follow them, please tweet them, and let them know how amazing the Thunder Bellies Mournfang pack really is under this Mawtribe.
One thing I would say, like, I love Mournfang. I actually really like the unit. When I saw Thunderbellies, I got excited. I was like, "Oh, excellent! This is a Mournfang one." And then I read it, and I was kind of like, "Oh, they just wanted to include them. That's it. This is just you get 1/2 Mawtribe. But the one thing I do like about it is not the swift outflank. The swift outflank is just going to be one of those things that players think they have to use it. So good players will go, well, this idiot's going to deploy on the flanks, and it's going to be, I'll just dodge it or stay away from him, and then his +3 will be, or his run in charge will be irrelevant. But it's actually the rip and tear I like, and the reason I like that is because the champion has a pistol, so you can feasibly actually put a wound onto the unit before you charge in if you're charging multi-wound models. So that's kind of cool. But that's about all I'd give it, is that it's cool. If you can get the rip and tear off on some Warnfang. But as Doom said, you're just better off taking it in Boulder Head with big beasts.
Or with a battalion. I think you guys.
Like I'm in the process of building about 20 Warnfang, and I will probably give Thunderbellies a bit of a go for the crack, and that's about it.
I'm not anti-Mordfang in any way. I actually think they've got a very good use, and they can be pretty good. But again, I'd use them in a different tribe as opposed to this.
Yep, fair enough. So that tribe, not as useful as some of the other ones. And I believe the final one we have in that former Beastclaw Raider build is the Winterbite Mawtribe. So what are we going to get from that? So the Ghost of the Blizzard, subtract 1 from the hit rolls for attacks made by missile weapons that target a friendly Winterbite unit that's wholly within its territory. The Call of the Endless White adds 1 prayer roll to the Call of the Blizzard when the Winterbite Priest is chanting that prayer. You've got a command ability that you can use this command ability at the start of the combat phase. If you do so, pick 1 friendly Winterbite hero, friendly Winterbite Frost Sabers units, and Winterbite Icefall Yeti units that are wholly within 12 of the Winterbite hero can fight at the start of the combat phase. These units cannot fight again in the combat phase. And then you've got a command trait and you've got an artifact. Thoughts on the Winterbite versus the previous 2 that we've just talked about?
The problem with Winterbite is it focuses around Yetis and Sabertusks. And while Sabertusks have their uses, to really benefit from the abilities you're getting here, it's very command point heavy. And the only way to really get command points in this army is by not taking a Mawtribe. So it's kind of irritating in that sense. Like there's a command trait that gives hunters D3 extra command abilities or command points at the start of a turn if they're in reserve. So even 1 turn in reserve, you get 2 command points. Next turn you come in and it's good. But then even if you do use this, the hunter can give extra attacks to Frost Sabers, and you can stack that as much as you want. So let's say you take this, and you also get add 1 to wound rolls if you're within 12 still. But then you have this command ability as well that makes them fight first. So you're taking the damage away, but to make them fight first as well. And they only hit on 4s, which I think is a big problem with this. They're a damage dealing unit. They're far more of a utility based unit. They're fast. They're reserves, and they can pick off a few wounds from an exposed character, and that's about it. But they're not big. They're not big damage dealers, and if you invest too much in it, I think you're just going to be disappointed.
Yep. So you could try and you could try and build then 2 Yetis in this, and you could say, and like during the review I did with Haywo, we said, okay, what is the hypothetical situation where we have 12 Yetis which have done a 6-inch pile-in? I mean, it's counterintuitive because by using a 6-inch pile-in, you can always strikes first almost anyways as well. But let's say, so you're in a situation now where I've 6-inch piled in to hit first, and now we're gone into the turn after, my opponent's still not dead. Your Yetis are probably dead then because they've only got a 6-up save. They've got a built-in -1, but let's say hypothetically they're still alive, so they get to fight. So now in this world where I haven't killed them and they haven't killed me in Age of Sigmar, which is almost non-existent, now I finally get to attack first. And the damage can be okay, but once again, Yetis hit on 4s as well. So in a third of the army as a Gloomspite Git player yourself, Anthony, there's -1 like everywhere. You're hitting on 5s, you're pillow-fisted. So I think your obvious ways that you would want to play this by ambushing on Frost Sabers, it defeats itself because you want the Winter Ranger command trait, which you can't take because you've taken this, like Mike was saying. And then they're hitting on 4s, so you want to invest all those command points, but it's just but even then it doesn't do that much damage. Or you go Yeti, but so yeah, it's self-defeating. the ways you want to try and use it, it just doesn't work. I still think there might be some use for it here in the book in combination with all the other model range, where you're actually taking a minimal amount of winter bite for one specific purpose, perhaps. I haven't worked it out yet. I don't know of anyone else that's worked it out yet either. I've got a sneaking suspicion there's a use somewhere for something, but I don't know what it is.
So what I'm hearing is that, you know, if I've got an old Beast Claw Raider army or I'm building around this type of build, Boulder Head is just so much more superior than the other two. And if I want to go down the, you know, the Mornfang or the Yeti route, I'm probably incentivized at a competitive level to do it outside of this tribe and do it in a no tribe with some other buffs and benefits that exist.
Like Yetis are excellent in units of 3 as backfield, like protectors and hunting down things like Canary Heartrenders and ambushes and things like that. Because with a 6-inch pile-in and a built-in -1 to hit at 110 points, they're more than capable of protecting your backfield, of dealing with those little threats that are trying to get behind you. They're actually excellent. Like they're almost the go-to unit for that specific thing. And again, too, cats are an excellent unit because they're one of the best greens that you have as well because they're fast. And they're also one of your only access to ambushing with the hunter. So they're excellent, but not in the user and not in the ways that this tribe seemingly wants you to use them. And this is the frustration. I'm sorry, Anthony, but I have to say, this is the frustration that some of us, like myself and Haywan, that have really expressed about this book. It's not a bad book. I certainly don't think, some people say it's a terrible book. I don't think it's that at all. But it's so frustrating that you have these tribes and the way that it seemingly tell you to build them is counterintuitive to how the army and the actual units play. And so you're really sitting here going, who wrote this? You know, like you're like, why is this? It's really frustrating because a lot of the other armies don't seemingly have this problem. And all you want to be is the same as them. You just want to be like, why can't I do that? So anyways, like it's just a perfect example there. It's like, it's telling you to do this, but it's like, obviously whoever wrote that.
It's been a I've heard it as a reoccurring theme throughout the entire session that we've had so far. You know, going back to the more pot, right? You know, getting that +1 to cast, but you don't want your wizard sitting at 1 inch of that more pot because you want them moving forward with your units because it's got a wholly within 12-inch buff. So if you look at this war scroll independently, let's again using the more pot as an example. Yeah, I'm like, man, I'm going to build an army that's based around this +1 to cast, and I do all these endless spells.
Yeah,
but
if you didn't actually know how the army played, then these rules are fine.
Correct, and I guess that's the trap that I think what you guys are calling out, which is amazing. Is if I'm building a list, I'm looking at these rules. I'm like, how do I maximize that +1 to cast, or how do I maximize that, the ability on the 12-inch sideboard? Well, yeah, you could do that, but it's a trap.
Yeah, so I just want to be clear to make sure that like any negativity I'm expressing is not actually about the ogres in the book because they're awesome. Like everything is awesome. The underguts, like it works, it's cool. The BCR is awesome. Like the individual war scrolls are really, really good. How the army plays, its model count, everything is excellent. How it plays on the tabletop, it's exciting because it blows shit up. It's really, really fun. But then when you read your allegiance abilities and stuff, you're like, oh, why can't I do this? Or I want to cross them. So I want to fit an ethereal Stonehorn into my underguts. Seems like something I should be able to do, right? Oh, I want to run underguts and I want to take a Stonehorn as well. Oh my God, now you're looking at like 2 battalions. You can't do it, right? And you're like, why? Like, why can't I? Or you cross it over or you go, I want to double cast, but I want to take my Stonehorns as well. Can't do it. You're like, okay, damn, this is really frustrating.
Yeah,
and that's
you're really restricted.
Yeah, really restricted. Yep.
Yeah. No, but to round up what I was saying earlier about like a lot of these mod tribes can be taken just for one of their abilities, like one particular purpose. The Winterbite does have a place in competitive play depending on your meta. So I know a lot of people talk about like building an all-comers list, but if your meta is quite heavy shooting, like a lot of Tempest Eye, Bone Splitters, Cunning Rook, then the Ghost and the Blizzard's ability will actually be useful to you. Because you can keep low drop, you can use Skal and Gourmand or whatever you can use. So you can stay low drop past the first turn, give them -1 to hit for the entire first turn, and then there's some of the territories are half the board. So then second turn you run up and they're -1 to hit again. So if anything for Winterbite, if you are worried about shooting in your meta, it's actually good for that at least to mitigate some of that damage.
No, great call. So we've kind of gone through all of the Mawtribes. We've kind of got a really good flavor, a very deep flavor, by the way, of all the different types of builds. Now, with that context in mind, let's look at maybe the hero choices that we have. And I guess, again, some heroes and some units in general are going to be better in the tribe that you pick. But at more of a generic level, maybe let's look at some of the ways we could build the list and some of the things that you guys have pulled out. So bear with me for 1 second. I'm going to bring up, that's just me. You don't want that. You want this. So what do we got? So we have a couple of leader choices. We've got a couple that are leader and behemoth, but your choices are going to be the butcher, the firebelly, the icebrow hunter, the slaughtermaster, the tyrant, all generic leaders. And then ones that are taking up that leader and behemoth slot are the Frostlord on Stonehorn, Frostlord on Thundertusk, Huskguard on Stonehorn, Huskguard on Thundertusk. So I might throw it over to each of you guys to maybe give me an example. What's a good hero? Why? How do you use it? General thoughts. Mikey, I'll throw it over to you first. Give me a hero.
Well, at the moment, because I'm playing Underguts, I'm forced into taking the Tyrant, but I'm kind of happy about that because I love the Tyrant model and I love Tyrants. So that's kind of cool. But the problem with the Tyrant is he does nothing outside of that. His damage is fairly lackluster, but he is a key part of Underguts because he's the one that gives the +1 to attacks for the Iron Blasters. So you need a Tyrant for the gruesome trophy rack. So I'm kind of happy they made a Tyrant specific artifact so that you have to take him because, again, it's probably one of my favorite unit entries, not just models, but one of my favorite unit entries across all of Age of Sigmar. But they did they nerfed his flavor damage, his kind of flavorable damage from the last edition where he could do about 20 odd wounds with his Great Gut Gouger.
Yeah.
But yeah, outside of Underguts, I wouldn't be taking a Tyrant unless I had to because of my battalion.
Great. Thank you. Doom?
All right. I might just, if I can take the liberty, I might just go into a spiel about the different wizards and just cover off on the different wizards and how you'd use them. So there are 3 different wizards you can use. There's the Slaughtermaster, the Butcher, and the Firebelly. And the Slaughtermaster is almost an auto-include for almost all armies. But you could not take him if you wanted to. He's a 1-cast wizard. He's got 7 wounds, and he's also carries around a pot, which gives you a random buff every single turn. You can also hurt yourself as well. He's the same cost as the Butcher, and he has the same wounds count and so forth. The difference is that the Butcher doesn't have the pot, so you don't get any buffs, but the Butcher fights like an Iron Gut. So having a Butcher who's also an Iron Gut and has a damage dealing spell on his War Scroll, whereas the Slaughtermaster only has a secondary buff, is different versatility. So most people will take a Slaughtermaster over a Butcher any day, and they do find it very hard to justify why you'd ever take a Butcher instead of a Slaughtermaster, because one of the buffs from the Slaughtermaster's pot is +1 to hit. So taking anything you have from hitting from 4s to 3s or 3s to 2s is absolutely huge, especially when the units that we have can do such a significant amount of damage, like 12 lead gluttons or 8 Iron Guts. Putting +1 to hit on them or your Stonehorn has a huge effect. But if you want to have a wizard that is going to stand by that Maw pot on a what do you call it? On a Balwin Vortex, then the Butcher's actually probably your better bet, because you can cast your spell like Rib Cracker at an extended range, and then you can also throw out a damage spell as well, and there's no conflict there by being, well, I want to push him up, but I have to keep him back, and you're sort of torn there. The Firebelly actually has access to some really fantastic spells, like really, really good with really good utility, and an anti-horde spell as well. So the problem is, though, you can't give him artifacts, you can't give him any like command traits or anything like that, and you're just short on points often. So when you're sitting there and you're like, okay, well, do I take my Slaughtermaster, which is an integral part of my army list? Do I take that or the Firebelly? Well, you take the Slaughtermaster almost every time for 20 points more, just because, and not because the Firebelly is not good, just because you don't have the points. The Firebelly is like a nice to have. So that's sort of like the wizard rundown. Most people take a Slaughtermaster every time, and if you have a second wizard, they would take a Slaughtermaster as well. I personally wouldn't be upset with you if you took a Slaughtermaster and a Butcher or a Firebelly because you had some specific use for something that does. Like if you have a Butcher with the Splatter Cleaver on it from Blood Gullet, like he can be up buffing your Gluttons and in combat mixing it up, fighting like an Iron Gut, killing stuff and exploding heals out as well. So there are uses for all of them, but generally most people are leaning on that Slaughtermaster.
Do you see a world where you take two Slaughtermasters as opposed to a Slaughtermaster and a Firebelly?
You pretty much take two Slaughtermasters every time.
Okay.
Like you pretty much always just take a Slaughtermaster unless you have some specific other reasoning for the Firebelly or the Butcher. But like, to be honest with you, you're pretty much better off just taking the Slaughtermasters.
Yeah, cool. That was kind of what I wanted to hear. Was was one enough, or if you were going to take a second one, or was one of the other ones?
I mean, to be honest with you, I run a Slaughtermaster and a Butcher, because I one thing I find is I want to try and get as many mortal wounds into the army as possible, especially when you're in Blood Gullets and all of your Gluttons have no rend. You're really looking for any additional mortal wounds anywhere you can, and so there's a spell. I can't remember its name now. That does D6 mortal wounds as well. It gives them an extra attack. It gives your opponent's unit an extra attack, but does D6 mortal wounds to them. But sometimes if it's like a 5-point hero, where giving them an extra attack doesn't make any difference, you want just that push just to be able to mortal wound something off. And if you're combining that with a Maw, which goes off on a 7, all our stuff is a 7, so it hardly goes off anyways. Like that's your only chances of getting the mortal wounds in. So sometimes I will run a Butcher just because I want to get any mortal wounds I can in the army anywhere.
No, that's great. No, thanks. I think it's a good overview of the 3 wizard choices.
I was really excited about Firebellies when they got released because I misread a couple of things. The Cascading Fire Cloak could have been one of the best spells in the book if it didn't say cast on the caster.
Yeah, I know.
If you could put that onto a unit, it would just be great. But it's just, and he doesn't fit into battalions. He, as you said, he can't be given artifacts or command traits. They've just kind of said, here he is, but don't take him.
Yeah, and in the book, under like how they're listed is where they fall in the hierarchy of ogres. He's even listed as an outsider. Like him and Managers, they're outsiders. They're just not really a thing. Like,
and just for my own clarity, why can't he take an artifact?
All the artifacts are unit specific. So there's Tyrant artifacts, there's Butcher artifacts, and a Slaughtermaster has the Butcher keyword. Then there's Stonehorn artifacts and Huskard artifacts, but there's no Firebelly artifacts.
But I could take a Malign sorcery artifact.
Yeah. Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. So, all right. So they can take an artifact, but there is nothing specific in this book to give them an artifact unless you tap into Malign sorcery. Cool.
Correct.
Just I'm like that's really odd that a leader choice couldn't take an artifact. But that makes more sense. What about our Frost Lords, either on Stonehorn or Thunder Tusks? Where are we at with those guys? I know you guys have shared some thoughts already around the Thunder Tusk, and potentially it's a time to maybe retire them or maybe not use them as often compared to a Stonehorn. Where are we at with this particular hero?
Well, I'll take the Thunder Tusk because I was using the Thunder Tusk in the last edition, and it was great. It was great to have that range, but they did go down in points a bit. But I just don't think enough because their shooting attack now, while it does better against big units, well, not reliably better, but it can do better against big units because it has the potential, and the fact that it has the potential to do worse as well. It's just kind of it's taken the bit away from being able to snipe a character out, and it wasn't particularly long ranged either. It was like an 18-inch range, so it was quite easy for opponents to keep out of that on turn 1 and then put a few wounds onto the Thunder Tusk and then negate it essentially. So that was its biggest utility, probably its only utility really, because it does have a -1 to hit aura if you're attacking it, but you're not really bothered by it because it doesn't do a lot of damage. So yeah, they can help against the hordes. I think it would have been better if it would have been something like pick a unit and roll a dice for each model in the unit, maybe. But the Thunder Tusks definitely took a blow. The Frost Lord on top of the Thunder Tusk Still does quite a lot of damage, but if you're going to take a Frost Lord, you're better off just going for a Stonehorn.
Yeah. Yeah, there's only 10 points difference between them, and the Frost Lord by himself fights like an Iron Gut, right? Like an Iron Gut champion. So you basically got four attacks, 3s and 3s, -1 rend, damage 3. So the Frost Lord on Thunder Tusk, the damage from the Thunder Tusk is nothing. So you're basically fighting with just an Iron Guts champion, and then he's not a priest, and you have the shooting attack, which is random and just not reliable. So there's really no reason why you would do that unless for some reason you were trying to run, Algar Ancient or something like that. But really, the Frost Lord on Stonehorn is where you're going to see your Frost Lords. And just one thing about them and their role, they're still just a damage dealing unit or a tank unit. So if you want a tank, you build an Ethereal Amulet and you give him the Metal Cruncher. And then he's got a 3-up unrendable armor save and with a 5-up after that. And for example, I took 2 pile-ins from a Ghoul King on Terrorgeist last night, and it did 1 damage to me. So when you and yeah, it's very nice. So the army needs a tank because nothing else is going to save your life. Everything else dies in the army. There's no after save. So your Stonehorn is your only way you're going to get a tank in. And also, if you make him the Murderhorn with the brand of the Svard and with the Black Gladderhorn, then he's your best chance to have -2 rend, high damage on the charge, right? So, but they're not. But even though they're your general, they don't offer anything to your army as far as command abilities or anything like that, because the one on their war scroll is just very ordinary. It's basically the same, almost the same as like your generic one you get out of the General's Handbook. So there's a big missed opportunity there. But the Frost Lords on Stonehorn are your go-to if you want that high -2 rend melee damage, or you want to have your tank in your army. And I would be suggesting that it doesn't almost matter what tribe you're taking. There is a use for one of those 2 Stonehorns in your army, but it is difficult to try and get them in because of the structure of the book.
Yeah. If we're talking Stonehorns, and we're clearly hearing that these guys are the tanks, they're the damage dealer. The story you just shared is remarkable. Do I, and let's assume in the ideal world I'm building my list out, do I build 1 Frost Lord on Stonehorn? Do I take 2, or do I maybe take 1 Frost Lord on Stonehorn and a Huskguard on Stonehorn? What's the combination potential?
So, okay, if you with the Black Gladderhorn and the brand of the Svard, those things only buff the mount to hit, and so the Frost Lord on top is neither here nor there. So you can run a Murderhorn that's just a Huskguard on Stonehorn, and you very well might do that. I mean, you can do it with the Cruncher as well, the Metal Cruncher as well, because the Huskguard doesn't really do any damage. It's just the Stonehorn, and you can still build them out with the same builds, and they also fit in some of the BCR battalions as a leader, and they actually do have a role in there as a command ability and that sort of thing. But 4 attacks, 3s and 3s, -1 damage 3 on top is quite nice. So if I should have said, you're right, if I'm leaning into that damage dealer role, then he's a Frost Lord. If I want him to be battalion and more of a versatile leader, I want a Huskguard. So running a Huskguard on a Stonehorn, you're going to see that quite a bit, and that's a legitimate way to build your army.
And he's good with Mournfang as well, the Huskguard. If you do tend towards Mournfang, he really gives them a strong buff by giving them an extra point of damage to their Tusks when they charge. So their Tusks when they charge are just are 3 damage apiece, 4s, 3s, -1, and there's 4 attacks apiece as well. If you're lucky enough to have Blood Feast there as well, you're really that is an absolute monstrous charge. But just so many attacks. That's why I like them so much, is because they have so many attacks. But you're right, between the Huskguard and the Frost Lord. Frost Lord is a standalone solo. He's going to go in and he's going to destroy anything that he touches, whereas the Huskguard will be a better utility piece for your army. But just take both.
Take one of each. Yeah.
Take one of each.
And I guess that's the question, right? The points difference as it currently stands is 80 points difference between the Huskguard and the Frost Lord on the Stonehorn. Is it worth the extra 80 points? And I think you guys have raised some really interesting points that, just because it's 400 points doesn't make it traditionally better. There is some really good stuff around the Huskguard that you could possibly do, and obviously reinvest that 80 points somewhere else. Final hero choice that we have is the Icebrow Hunter. I imagine this is very situational. Love to hear what you guys think around this particular leader choice.
For me,
go on. You go ahead.
For me, he's an auto include. So for me, it doesn't matter if I'm playing Boulderhead or it doesn't matter if I'm playing Blood Gullet. I think the last one-day tournament I went in, all 3 of the games I was playing, and throughout those games, I was looking at the board going, if I had one unit that could ambush on, I win this game. And so he's pretty much your best way to get that in. And so I don't think it matters what type or tribe of army you want to try and get a hunter or end with some cats into your army, because he's your only way to ambush on the table, 9 away from the enemy, messes with their deployment, also can win you those games, means they can never leave an objective unguarded, and just such a useful tool.
And he brings with him the cats or the Yetis?
Frost Sabers.
Yeah,
he brought Yetis. Oh, I wish he brought Yetis. Oh my god.
Was there something? The Yetis ambush? I feel like there was something back in the day, or I remember Yetis ambushing me at some point. I can't remember why.
Gorgeous.
Yeah, I just have nightmares of Matt Campbell ambushing me with Yetis back in the day.
They were very fast. They could ignore terrain. They just run past terrain, and they were 7-inch move, I think. They are fast. They always were faster than normal ogres. So yeah, that might be it if they run and.
I think you're thinking about gorges, to be honest.
Yeah, I must be. So if I'm taking the Icebrow Hunter, I'm clearly taking my kitty cats to go with them. Yeah, the Frost Sabers.
And again, one of the command traits that makes that better is it means you can't take a Mawtribe, is you can take 2 units of cats. But again, that takes you away from Mawtribes. I was going to say literally the exact same thing as Doom, auto include in pretty much all of my lists. I don't think you have to go like a big unit of them. I think like 4 or 6 of them is ample for a lot of the times, and it also makes it easier to get them in. So your opponents have to be really like even 2. Even if you have if you take Skal, you're always going to have a 2 and your bigger unit. And then you can say, right, I'm going to put the 2 in reserve because you've deployed very tight over there, but I think I can fit 2 in, and that's all of a sudden mucked up their plans. But yeah, he's right. They are game winning. They're also good for stopping you from getting wrecked early on by like early onset shooting. So I was playing against Bone Reapers, and he had 2 crawlers, the bane of our existence, and he left a tiny gap between units of Mortec Guard, where I was able to come on about 10 or 11 inches away from the crawler, but 9 away from the guard. Got my charge in, +4 to the charge, get within 3 of the crawler, and there's a turn of shooting gone from it. If some players I see, if they're leaving crawlers in the back line and running forward with everything else, if he does that, that means I get to fight both those crawlers for the entire game, because those crawlers do no damage in combat and have a minimum 6-inch range. So if you're able to wrap around them and they can't fall back or just keep charging them, then happy days. They only have, I think, a 4-inch move. I think they can have a 7-inch move with the command ability, but they need a guy beside them, which the liege will probably be beside them. But that's absolutely agree. Auto include Hunter and some cats, and then it's just a case of do I take Skal, or have I got another battalion already in place?
And those Frost Sabers are so cheap, which is a nice segue into filling up my battle line choices. So you have one generic battle line choice, which is the Ogre Gluttons. But then you've got a whole bunch of battle line unlocking ability, where you've got your Stonehorn Beast Riders, which is unlocked if your general is a Beast Claw Raider, same as the Thunder Tusk Beast Rider. If your general is a Beast Claw Raider, that is a battle line. You've also got your Frost Sabers if your general is an Icebrow Hunter. You have your Icefall Yetis if your general is mounted on a Thunder Tusk. Iron Guts become battle line if your general is a Gut Buster. The Lead Belchers, same story, but you have to take at least a unit of 4 because currently the minimum unit size is 2 with this unit. And then finally you have the Mournfang pack, where if your general is a Beast Claw Raider, this becomes battle line. So you've got a whole bunch of battle line choices depending on your general choice. Doom, I'm imagining are Gluttons a good battle line choice for you, or where do you start?
Oh, it depends on my tribe, to be honest with you. But It's a little bit complicated. So so at the moment I'm running Frost Sabers as my battle line with a Frost Lord as my general, or I'm in Boulder, or I'm no tribe and I've got Winter Ranger as my hunter as my general, and then in that instance my Frost Sabers are still my battle line. But if you run any other sort of Gutbuster army, for example, with your Underguts, or if you're Blood Gullet, for example, your Lead Belchers, your Iron Guts, and your Ogre Gluttons are most likely to be your battle line. So you really do have quite a fair bit of flexibility there. You could run one of each if you really wanted. You could run 2 units of 12 Ogre Gluttons, which is very common. Or you can run, so if you run 2 units of Ogre Gluttons and a unit of Iron Guts, that's your battle line, right? And all of that wraps up into something like a Gorman battalion or some of the other battalions that you can take as Gutbusters as well. So that's all fine. But sometimes if you just want to run the Skull and Frost Sabers so that you've got your screens built into your battle line, and then you can just focus on damage dealing units. But it won't be uncommon to run 4 battle line units in this. It really is one of the best parts about the book. You can choose your battle line to fit your flavor, and it's excellent. So I honestly would say to people, run whatever you want. Units of 12 Ogre Gluttons are quite strong, especially when they're buffed. They're really quite strong. Iron Guts in a unit of 4 are very strong, do a lot of damage as well. And they also supplement Gluttons very well because you can deploy them behind them and they can hit over the top. So you have a counterattack option there as well. So that's fine. If you're in Underguts and you want to take Lead Belchers to take advantage of that shooting, like your Lead Belchers are your battle line. So there you go, you're going to be taking those. Alternatively, if you wanted to be Boulder Head with Mournfang and wrap it up in a battalion, then your Mournfang are going to be your battle line. So you've got really versatility here to take whatever battle line you'd like. And a large bit of it's going to be by your psychology of what do I actually like? Like if you're looking at your Mournfang and you're like, fuck yeah, I want to run these guys, they're going to be your battle line,
So so you've mentioned 3 units there. You've got your Ogre Gluttons, you've mentioned your Iron Guts and your Lead Belchers. What's the key difference between the 3 units, I guess, from a role unit, what they do on the tabletop, or what's the key differences?
So Gluttons get to reroll charges for free. They have a lot of attacks with damage 2, but no rend. So what you can do is you can charge them in. If you take a unit of 12, which you get a horde discount for, they're 120 normally, and then they go down to 400 for 12. So it's an 80-point discount. Each hit roll of 6 with double clubs explodes and does another hit, and because it's damage 2, it's huge. So if you're running in with 12 Ogre Gluttons, on the charge, you get the impact hits, mortal wounds on a 4+ from the Allegiance ability, and then you're attacking, you're getting 36, 40, you're getting a ton of attacks which all explode. If you're against anything that's with a 4-up armor save, you'll smash them. You'll absolutely smash them. Even Iron Jaws, you charge into, you absolutely hammer them. Once you get down to 3-ups and rerolls and stuff like that, they completely become very ineffective. Iron Guts, on the other hand, have built-in -1 rend. They've got a 2-inch range, which is really significant because if you run a unit of 4 or 8, they can stand behind each other and still hit over the top. So it's very easy to get them all in. And they're damage 3. They're your big boys, but they're kind of glass cannons because even though they've got a 4-up armor save, they still die just as easy as Gluttons do to most things. So they're more expensive. You're going to have less of them, but they're more effective at they've got rend and they've higher damage, and it's easier to get more of them in. But you've got to protect them. They have to have a screen, whereas your 8 Iron Guts have to have a screen, or you've lost all those points, and those points are more expensive than 12 Ogre Gluttons at 400. So it's so that's the trade-off there. They're the elite, and then Lead Belchers do whatever you want with them. Lead Belchers are good because they've got a lot of versatility. Okay, you're always at odds with yourself because you're I get D6 shots if I don't move, or D3 shots if I move. And what I really want to do, I want to move, shoot him, and then I want to charge in and get the rest of the damage of the unit because they've actually got rend on their attacks, but 1 less attack. So you're I'm 5 inches away. I don't want to move because I want to shoot with the D6, but then you're 5 inches. If I fail this charge, it's GG. So you're okay, I'll move up to I'm 3, and then I only get D3 shots, and then my damage isn't anywhere near it. And then I charge in, and you're oh God. maybe I should have just taken Gluttons. That's my experience with lead belchers is I just always want to move, even if I'm 6 inches away, 5 inches away. I don't want to take the risk of failing that charge. So I move them D3, not effective, and yeah, but but they offer so much more versatility because you know what? In the shooting phase, I shoot that 1 or 2 wounds off that unit that was pinning my Stonehorn, and now he's free, and he goes and murders what you want, captures the objective, which none of your other melee stuff can do. So for all the back and forth and argument about lead belchers and blah blah blah, they just have that versatility there, which is very useful. So that might be a reason why you want to include them, because at least I've got the option to do this thing now.
Awesome. We've got the Beast Claw Raider side. So Mick, Wendel, I might throw this one over to you. You've got your Stonehorn Beast Riders. You've got your Thunder Tusk Beast Riders. Any thoughts or any observations when it comes to these guys as your battle line?
Yeah, I often take the Hunter as my general because he turns almost all of the Beast Claw stuff into battle line, which makes him very good. So I haven't actually used Stonehorn Beast Riders or Thunderhoof Beast Riders as my battle line yet in the new book. I've used them in the old one before, but I haven't used them in the new book. But because of the 10 models, each counting as 10 models, taking a Stonehorn Beast Riders, they still have all the damage of the Frost Lord just without the spear attack, which is the main damage. The horns? They're just outrageous. It's a potential 24 damage when he charges, just from the horns, and that's without any external buffs. So they're actually they're huge. I don't think you'll see Thunder Tusk Beast Riders as battle line. It's too expensive to bring them in as battle line. If someone was looking to fill their battle line, you'll see Frost Sabers or Mournfang for a bit of punch. I'm actually. It's funny you were saying there about depending on what mod tribe you use will depend on what battle line, what generals you use. I've actually trying to do the opposite at the moment, where I build my list and see what battalion and mod tribe or what battalion fits that. So I recently was using Gormand in my underguts, but now I want to try. I wanted to try Mournfang instead of Iron Guts, but that gives me the dilemma of now I don't have my full battle line.
Yeah.
So I changed the Hunter to be the general rather than one of the Gutbusters. I brought in an extra unit of Cats and Skal. It's a bit of a cheaper battalion. I drop the underguts. I take 4 Mournfang, or the Iron Guts, and take 4 Mournfang instead, and I've got no Gluttons in the list. And the reason why I did it actually was because I found myself lacking mobility in the army. I needed some more mobility, and that extra 2 or 3 inches from a Mournfang, 2 inches extra move. No, sorry, they've got a 9-inch move, but they also have +1 inch move on the charge. And the amount of times I was charging on turn 3, 4, and 5 to get objectives, and all I had to do was be able to pile in, and being that 1 or 2 inches away, it just made me thinking if I had Mournfang, so I want to try them next. So my next list actually is using the Hunter as the general with Mournfang and Frost Sabers as my battle line, and it's just a really nice, cheap way of filling out your battle line. Now you can't really compare Frost Sabers, Mournfang, and Beast Riders. They're all very extremely different. You're going to take Beast Riders when you want to play a 5 beast army. That are 5 or 6 beasts. That's when you're going to use that. You're also going to take them when you use your Eurobad or Jorobad battalions, because they're one of the tax in them. And to be honest, as I said before, the Stonehorn Beast Riders isn't exactly a tax because they do work. They are formidable. The Frost Sabers, again, you're going to take these because of their speed and how cheap they are. They come on with a Hunter and Skal +4 inches to charge. You can really threaten backline characters with that potential 16-inch charge. As long as there's something within 12, you've got a potential 16-inch charge, and you can run around screens with that, jump onto objectives. So that kind of that massive movement of them, I just think that makes them absolutely auto-include in most armies. And then you have Mournfang, and they are. I really like them at the moment because they are. First of all, they have 6 wounds apiece with a 4-up armor save. So for me, that means they're going to be around longer to benefit from the healing abilities in the Ogre book. And there's 2 healing abilities. There's the Great Maw Pot, which more than likely you're only going to use once per game, But there's also the butcher's cauldron, or the slaughtermaster's cauldron, which is heal 1 wound and everything in 16. And it might seem minor, but it's the difference between a model dying or not sometimes, and that's what I found in experience. Now in practice, those sort of situations are probably hard to come by, but when you see it happen, it's hard not to put value on it. And then the last one, Yetis. I think when Doom was talking about Yetis saying they're perfect backline, but people want to put them forward and give them the fight first and have them threaten. They're 50 mil bases as well. You kind of do just keep them on the back line, and that's really all you can do. They can maybe sit beside a butcher in whatever that Mawtribe is that lets them fight first. So if something does come down and charge them, they fight first and hopefully kill them. But I won't be looking at Yetis in any of my lists anytime soon. Between the models being fairly dated, 50 mil bases, and hitting on 4s, they're just not really desirable at the moment.
Fair enough. Doom, anything you'd want to add to that, or are you happy to move on?
Yeah,
cool.
That's fine.
All right, easy. So there are battle line choices we've talked about. We do have other units that are sitting outside of battle lines. So you've got your Gorges, you've got your Noblars, you have your Man-Eaters. And then obviously you've got some artillery. We'll talk about those 3 first, and then we'll go to our artillery choices. I've seen a lot of people building Noblars at the moment. Are they crazy, or is there some secret list tech in this new book?
Noblars are an absolute necessity. I was running 60 in the last book, and I needed them. There was no two ways about it. Having a screen that was unbreakable was my only way of combating armies of books. But then when Slanesh and Feck came out, it just wasn't good enough. So 20s were all you needed just to slow them down for a turn. But it's still the case, because we don't have teleports, we don't have anything like the list of things we talked about that we didn't get in our book. Then what we have to do in lieu of that is take Noblars. So I have 2 units of 20 Noblars. That's another auto include in all my lists at the moment. 2 20s just to kind of sit on back objectives to run forward in front of my lead belchers or my iron guts or gluttons. And again, it's just because if you don't do that, then whatever you've run up forward is just going to die before you get a chance. And it's a great way to protect you against double turns. But that is really it. They're literally they're a screen. They're a meat screen to stop you from getting caught out.
20 models for 100 points is incredible value.
Mm-hmm.
Incredible value.
Yeah.
But it's the 270 there for 60 is amazing. And you can use the Tyrant's command ability to belt them, make them immune to battle shock. So you belt 60 Noblars, and then you push them up so they're immune to battle shock for the rest of the game, and then you blob them up onto the objective and say, chew through the wounds before you even have a chance, or just puts 4 Iron Guts behind their line, and then anything that goes into the Noblars has to fight the Iron Guts as well. So yeah. I would traditionally always take just 1 unit, because I hate pushing the models around. Like I play ogres, because I take always 1 unit of 20. And then it used to be units of 3, now it's units of 4, but a unit of Iron Guts to sit with them as well. And I'd move those onto an objective and just say, come and try and get me, because I got 20 models with the Noblars plus the Iron Guts, and anything that comes into the Noblars gets hit by the Iron Guts as well. So you can build nice little castles with them, and plus the screening and all the reasons that Mike said as well.
Yeah. What about the other 2 choices? You've got your Gorges and you've got your Man-Eaters.
Gorges are going to be great one day. They just need to go down in points, to be completely honest with you. They got better in this new edition of the book, but they also went up in points. And what they really need to do is stay the same points they were before, and then get the War Scroll improvements that they got. So I think that over time, you're going to see them again. They ambush on, they can reroll charges, and now they can fight much better as well. So, but there's no way at the moment you're paying 240 points for 3. They do give you a little bit of board control. If you take them, they ambush on the first turn, so you can put them on objectives turn 1 instead of committing your main blocks to them. But largely, I think we're not going to see them till GHB 2020. And the other one was Man-Eaters, which are some of the best models in the whole range. And they're actually probably the main reason I play this army, is because of how good those models and those sculpts are. and their damage is actually good. Like they do good damage. They have shooting as well, so they add that versatility into your army, and they're also pretty much the only way that you can get run and charge on a gutbuster unit. So, and like game 2 at the last one-day tournament, that simply on the last turn of the last round, running and charging with my man-eaters won me the game. The problem they have, this only have a 5 armor save, and with ogres, you're in combat everywhere, all the time. You're always multiple units in combat, and so you rarely get to attack with them first, and they just fall over. So a unit of Ardboys, especially in the new Auric Warclans, will smash your man-eaters if you're not attacking first. So you do have a target priority problem when you're running them. At the moment, I honestly just think they're overcosted at 180. I think if they're 150, sort of the same as trolls, then I would be running them. But and I really want to run them because the models are so good, but they're just too expensive at the moment.
Yeah,
You've got. Go, Mark.
Yeah, no, I'd be the same opinion. The man-eaters are probably the one unit in the book that will never see play in a tournament. I think the next one is going to be the scrap launcher, but talk about that in a while. But the man-eaters they're just 180 points. It's an extra 20 points a model on a glutton for rend and an extra attack, really. Like you have the abilities that you get to choose, but they're just so expensive for the 5+ save. If they had a 4+ save, maybe a little bit different. The guns are good again, but they're still only 12-inch range, one shot each. But they're in that mediocre bracket that just makes them fairly pants.
Okay. And just to wrap the man-eaters up with a nice little bow, do you prefer to take them in units of 3? Do you like to go into 6, 9, or will you go to the full potential of 12 in the unit?
If you're taking 12 man-eaters, I want to know who you are, and I want a photo of it, and I'll shout you out on the next episode of Doomcast because you're a legend. But so far, I've run them as 3 for my backfield reactionary, my fullbacks, if you're into football, for example. They're quite good in that role, but they're just overcosted for what they do. Yetis do the same job, but do it better. So that's how I've run them, and I have built lots of lists with units of 6 in there as well. But I couldn't, I would play that at a one-day event for fun. I wouldn't travel all the way to Sydney GT or CanCon and spend a couple of grand doing so and run them.
Yeah,
I agree.
I was curious to know how many points a unit of 12 are worth, and it's just over 700 points. So big investment when you compare that to almost a Nagash or an Archeon.
Yeah, not nearly as good.
But if you are running them, make sure to tag Doom because he would absolutely love to see that picture of 12 man-eaters on the table.
Yep.
You alluded to it, Mr. Wendel, earlier. You've got 2 artillery pieces. One is the Iron Blaster. One is the Scrap Launcher. Now, I know you're a big fan of the Scrap Launcher. Isn't that correct?
The scrap launcher is pretty crap, but I do, as a model and as a premise, I absolutely love them. I've actually, the first tournament I ever went to as a Warhammer player, I brought 2 scrap launchers with me, and that was a Warhammer GT back in 2005 in Warhammer World, and people thought I was nuts bringing these absolutely terrible models into the game. I've always had an affinity for this Orc and Ogre weapons that are crudely built. And that's why, even in the last edition of Ogres, I was trying to shoehorn Iron Blasters and try and make them work. And now I'm just happy that they actually have a role. But the scrap launcher, it got a bit of a buff. The fact that it got 3 shots and then with the battalion an extra shot, it makes them not the worst thing in the book. But with the 4s to wound, it's just such a killer. And there's no rend on it, no mortal wounds, no nothing. They used to have this thing called sharp stuff, and on 6s to hit, it was basically ignored armor. This is back in the old template stage. Yeah, basically killing blow. That's what it was. On a 6 to hit, it was killing blow, which was a dead model, which was great. But it was only the guy in the middle of the blast template.
Yeah.
And every other one was like a ignored armor if it was a 6 to hit. But those little things were cool, and I think that's something they needed. I think that's something, if they said on a 6 to wound it was a mortal wound, you might see it a bit more, just because of weight of attacks. But yeah, it's just they're not like if it said you had 4 attacks, but each attack is like the Stormcast one. It blows up into D6, and then 6 is to wound or mortal wounds. You might be like, okay, well that's a bit more random and flavorful, and the fact that you're hitting on wounding on 4 is balancing. But yeah, they just don't do a lot. 4 is to wound, no rend, and yeah.
So the damage potential is not there for the 120 point investment that you're making on the scrap launcher.
Basically, yeah. And then the Iron Blaster standalone is, quote Doom here, hot garbage. It's 120, but like I ran them for long enough, and in the previous edition of them, they were actually better standalone because they had rerolls to hit against units of 10 or more. So that made them actually that I surprisingly did quite well with them in those instances, like firing 3 cannons into Daughters of Cain. I actually beat a Daughters of Cain army because of the Iron Blasters, but that made them really strong because it was I think the equivalent to almost 2s and 2s to hit, and so that made them good. But then they took that away, and now if you don't take Iron Guts, if you don't take Underguts, and if you don't take the Gruesome Trophy Rack, there's no point. So yeah, it's unfortunate the artillery is pretty crap. I wouldn't even say it's overcosted because it's actually quite well costed. The rules just need to change to, because if you undercosted it, then it's a really cheap high wound model with a good save. So it's one of those weird things that I wouldn't change the points. I would just want them to change how it works a little bit to be a bit more impactful in the game.
Yep, I would say that if you absolutely need to put some shooting in, you could put some Noblar scrap launchers in there, and you could even lean into it a little bit with a junk mob to make it a little bit better. But if you really want to build into shooting, just go Underguts with Iron Blasters, and you're probably better off. But if you love the model and you really want to play them, then you want to just put one in. Like you could probably find the points to do it, and it'd be fine. But if you really want to build shooting into your army, you're probably leaning into Underguts.
Yeah, we've certainly already heard some really strong builds on tapping into that Iron Guts and Lead Belcher approach. You've got 3 allied choices. No, you've got 2 allied choices. You've got your Gargants and you've got your Troggoths. Do you have the points to tap into these? I can see a lot of high cost models in your army. Do either of these allied choices feel something you're missing? Do you have the points? And if you are going to take something from your allies, what are you tapping into?
One thing I would tap into as the top ally, if you were, is the Trog Hag, and that's probably the only thing that would put me like thinking about list building. The rest is kind of just like I might take some Rot Guts or some River Trolls. The River Trolls maybe for their main purposes. They're quite tanky in that they're -1 to hit, and they have the shooting and they've got a lot of attacks. Similar to why my argument between Iron Guts and Mournfang, there's just more attacks on the Trogs, so there's more of a chance of putting some damage through. But they're 150. Is it 150 points for the Trogs, or is it 160?
150 for the Fellwater and 140 for the Rock Guts. So
so they're not bad if you wanted to include something for. But again, you're probably better off just including your own stuff to benefit from the allegiance abilities that you have, and just to like I'm definitely strapped for points. Like I have no way of doing it. I'd have to build an army around, for example, the Trog Hag. To do it, I couldn't amend my list to include it under the current circumstances.
And she's a big points in sync as well.
I think she's like 350 or 380 or something.
I think she's 380.
Yeah.
And that's a Forge World model if anyone's curious on where the Troggoth Hag can be found. It's not on the Games Workshop website. It is a Forge World model.
Mm-hmm.
So the Fellwater Troggoths perform exactly the same role as what Maneaters do as a fullback in units of 3, but they only do it better because they're 150 points as opposed to 180. They have the same amount of attacks, same red, same damage. They've got a -2 vomit attack though that hits better, right? So it's just better. And then they've got the built-in -1 to hit on their War Scroll and the same armor save. So if you're looking for units that add some versatility and can fill that backfield role, just some little reactive units, then units of Fellwaters are good for that. I've certainly run them at events, and I used to run them pre-book in my army all the time. Now a unit of 6. So when you build your list, I commonly find I've got about 240 to 280 points to play with. Like I put the things I need, like to make the list, and then I've got this little gap. I can say, well, that's a unit of Iron Guts, it's a unit of Mournfang, or it's a unit of 6 Rock Gut Trolls. So if you're trying to get extra -2 rend into your army, and also the D3 damage from the Boulder throw, Rock Guts are a really good choice. But Mortek Crawlers would just fucking waste the unit with one shot. Right, so that's something you have to sort of think. So for my CanCon list, I would have them in there all day long, but my round 1 matchup is against Liam and his Ossiarch Bone Reapers, and I'm like, they're just dead, they're just wait. And I think Ossiarch are going to be a big part of the meta moving forward as well, as you saw from your excellent show that you did, Emerging Meta, Anthony. So yeah, they're going to be everywhere, and so Rock Guts are a real thing, and they're a good answer to it in a way because they're -2 rend, but like they're just going to die to the crawlers. So I think they're a legitimate option, but yeah, not really.
Yeah. So that's your ally choices. You finally have some battalions you can tap into, and we've already started weaving this beautiful magic in when it comes to your battalions. So you've got, what have you got? So you've got, are all the battalions good, or are there some that you guys are just picking out as just, clear standout winners?
Pardon me. Yep. Let me just get to the page, and I'll tell you what's hot and what's not, and then.
So you got your Tyrant's Gut Guard. Well, I'll stall for time. So Tyrant's Gut Guard. You've got the Gore. Is it the Goremand? The Butcher's Band, the Junk Mob, the Alfrost Run, the Jawbad, the Earlbad, the Torbad, the Skull.
So the Tyrant's Gut Guard you'll see in some Underguts builds, right?
Mm-hmm.
You'll see that really quite common because you're already taking a lot of the units, and it's one of the cheaper battalions as well. So the battalion itself is really not that good, but it's not bad, but it's not that good. And but you will take it because you need to get that artifact in there. You need to get the gruesome trophy rack, and you're already taking this stuff anyways.
Yeah.
The Goremand is probably the battalion that the most people will go to for the Gutbusters, a Gutbuster heavy build. It's got all the units you want. You can make a very low drop army. It gives you a second dip into the pot as well for the Slaughtermaster. So you're going to see Gormands everywhere. The Butcher's Warband is just a worse version of the Gormand. And it's basically the same, but a butcher instead of a Slaughtermaster, and you just don't want it, and you will never take it. So, but people do, they build to it at the moment. I've seen them doing it on Facebook. And so I just say, just don't do that. Just use the Gorman instead. It's exactly the same, but just way better.
Because you're healing a wound to friendly units in a battalion
within
that's within 12.
Yeah, as opposed to potentially getting 2+1s to hit per turn, like on a unit,
Mm-hmm.
And then you've got the Junk Mob as well, which you could use as the cheap second battalion if you're trying to sneak an artifact in there. But realistically, you're probably not going to be doing that. You're going to be building a Underguts anyways, and you're probably going to go the Tyrant Gut Guard. So really, the Gorman and the Tyrant's Gut Guard are the go-to there. The Butcher's Band, just forget about completely. And the Junk Mob, sure, go for it. But
I mean, if you're running at least once, if you're going to run one scrap launcher and you're running one unit of Noblars, why not?
Yeah, I mean, some people love Noblars. If you love Noblars, go for it. Junk Mob all day long. I'm sure someone's going to do 3 units of 60 when maxed out on bloody on scrap launchers as well, and basically they should be playing Gloomspite, but whatever.
I was just going to say, just play Gloomspite.
Yeah.
Come to my side.
Yeah, so that's that for those battalions, I think, anyways. What about you, Mick?
Yeah, no, I definitely agree with you. I actually haven't touched the Tyrant's Gut Guard yet, purely because the Gormand, I love the double cauldron. But I have been looking more at the Tyrant's Gut Guard because it has it does bring my drops down, and that's literally the only reason why I'm looking at it. The Butcher's Band, I just can never bring myself to take it. Every time I build my list, and I'm like, oh, I've got Butcher's Band, I just always change over to Gormand and just take the Slaughtermaster instead. I'm currently thinking about a list with both at the moment, because I was looking at Blood Gullet the other day and I wanted to do something with magic, but then I said I'm not going to use a tribe, and I'm using the one that lets me dispel end the spells of +2, and then a couple of other the magic artifacts. So I am looking at the 2 of them, but I just don't think you can go double battalion with the amount of choices you're forced to take there as well.
Do you need it? Do you need 3 artifacts? Do you need the double battalion?
I needed the 3 artifacts, and it's quite command point heavy as well. So that was the other reason. But yeah, it's probably not. It's probably going to be a no-go. But yeah, that I can't see the Butcher's Band making much of an appearance over a Gourmand. For the exact reasons what Doom said. It's just a worse Gourmand.
It's hot garbage.
Yeah. Junk Mob is literally your. I'm doing this because I want people to know I'm mad. That's it. There's no competitive reason. The extra attack is just more crap on a crap unit. It doesn't make it better. It's like it scales the model up a bit, but its power level is 0. So anything times 0 is still 0. There's no relevance to it at all. It brings drops down if you're already taking them. I think if you're already taking scrap launchers and nobblers, then you go, well, put them in the junk mob. But why would you be taking scrap launchers in the first place?
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
What?
And then for the BCR side of it, you've got 4 different battalions: the Gelbad, the Earlbad, the Torbad, and the Skull. 3 of them have got bad in the name, and 2 of them are bad. So the first thing is you've got the Gelbad, which at the start of the hero phase in the first battle round, each friendly unit from the battalion can make a move of D6, roll separately for each unit. So it's like a very, very poor man's old Iron Fist. You won't worry about that. You basically won't take it. You'll see an Earlbad quite a bit, and I'll just run through this one. It's got a Huskard on Stonehorn, so we've spoken about him. He's got a roll, can do a fair bit of damage. 1 to 3 Stonehorn riders, so great. You can fit 4 Stonehorns in this battalion already, and then 2 to 4 units of Mournfang. So if you want to run Stonehorns and Mournfang, you can take this, and then you're doing mortal wounds on a hit roll of 6, which is pretty nice.
In addition, as well.
Yeah, the Mournfang can get up to quite a lot of attacks. They can get to 3 damage on the charge, on the tusks, things like that. So this can be a very low drop BCR army, which actually gives you a buff as well. So if that's where you want to be, you're probably going to take this, and it's going to be quite good. The Torbad is just bad. Don't worry about that. And then we've got the Skull, which we've spoken about a lot already, which is the Frost Sabers and the Hunter. And the Skull is a good battalion with good unit selections for pretty much any ogre build that you want to play. Like, you can fit it in, and it does a great job and gives you that free, cheap second battalion that's usable. So, yeah, that's what I would say, and I think you're going to see Skulls everywhere.
Absolutely. Skull, as I said, for me, is one of those things that is, I'd say half of my lists will have Skull in it. All of them will have hunters and dogs in them. And then if I'm not taking another battalion for a reason, it'll be Skull. Skull will be my fallback battalion on every list. Yeah, you're right. Gelbad and Torbad are terrible. Torbad is the most ridiculous battalion that anyone's ever created, ever. That's not a mega battalion. For some reason, they thought it was okay to say 3 to 9 Thundertusk Beast Riders as a requirement. I thought that was a misprint, because the other ones are 1 to 3 Stonehorns, which is perfectly acceptable. You want Stonehorns in your army, but we all know nobody wants Thundertusks in their army. So it's a bit of a pity that they said 3 to 9 Thundertusks, which are the big investment, and 0 to 3 Yetis, which are the minimal investment. It's actually a mind-boggling battalion requirement why they did that. So much so that I actually included in my FAQ questions to ask if someone just fucked up here.
Did you mean it to be the other way around?
Yeah. Are you stupid? So, like, it's just never going to see play, ever. But I really like the Earlbad. The ability on the Earlbad's actually a really a sneaky ability. The Beastclaw Raiders actually have a lot of attacks, especially with the likes of Mournfang. Like, a unit of 4 Mournfang have 24 attacks basic. So that's like 24 chances to get mortal wounds. Right, like, it's a very good bit of chip damage for them. And even the Stonehorns have a lot of attacks. Like, there's like 10, 15 attacks or something on Stonehorn Beast Riders. So again, more ways to get that chip damage in, and those extra mortal wounds every so often can really make all the difference. Killing that last model, bringing them down a damage profile, all these things, even bringing them below 10 so you claim the objective. Can just have massive impacts. Those extra chip damage. I think Earlbad is probably my favorite in terms of like what it does and how cool it is. Skal is my favorite in terms of that it's probably the best.
Yeah, I'll definitely take a once I'm done with Underguts, I'll go onto an Earlbad then after that.
Yeah.
Just my Earlbad BCR, and that should get me through the year, right, between those 3 different builds. So
I think so. I think you've hit the 3 kind of main builds on the head there.
Awesome. So we've built lists. We've talked about the unit choices. We've talked about what's good, what's not good. Obviously, we've tied that all into our battalions. We've tied that into our tribes. It's now time to customize and, tweak, modify, call out some of those really cool command traits, artifacts that are available to us to, to help us go from good to, to great. Now we've got a whole bunch of command traits. I've just put them back on the screen. Now for tyrants, you've got 6 choices here. Love to hear from you guys. Which ones do you guys think really stand out from you, if any, actually, by the way, for tyrants? So you've got the Furious Guzzler, you've got the Prodigious Girth, you've got the Killer Reputation, the Mighty Bellower, the Eye of the Loot. Sorry, I'm squinting on my other laptop, and the Crushing Bulk. Clearly why I'm not looking at the camera. So do any of those stand out for a tyrant, assuming obviously we don't take a tribe?
Not really. Like you have like the tyrant is a cool model, but he's not very impactful on the game outside of Underguts, for example, or 60 Noblars getting free battle shock. Like Crushing Bulk, when I first saw it, I was like, this is cool. He'll charge in, do a load of mortal wounds, but then they just don't. You can't rely on, rolling that 2d6, successfully charging 1, and then 2 rolling a lot of 4+. The amount of times I've been disappointed has been it's heartbreaking. I think probably the best one there, if you did have a tyrant as your general, was an Eye for Loot, because it makes him a bit of a threat to characters. He gets to reroll hit and wound rolls. You can maybe fish for 6s if you're really ambitious and try and get those extra mortal wounds in, but he just doesn't have the damage to really be threatening.
Yeah. Doom, anything from here that you would call out for tyrants?
If I'm taking one, which means I'm not taking a tribe, and I want to run fun, I've probably just got Killer Reputation. I'm going to give him 2 picks off the big name, give him a 3-up armor save, and +2 his movement or something like that, and just be done. Moving as a fast little pinning tank. So that might be the one I go for.
Fantastic. And the traits of the Butcher. So we've got 6 to choose from, Michael. Doom, which one, if any, you would call out?
So there are actually some good ones here. So this is one of the few where there are actually some good choices. So Questionable Hygiene is one of run. Subtract 1 from hit rolls for enemies made by enemy units while they're within 6. It's actually really good. Your Slaughtermaster or your Butcher is always up really close to your Iron Guts or Gluttons, whatever else. So anything they are fighting is generally going to be -1 to hit. So it's actually really quite strong. And then you've got the Gastromancer as well, which is all spells from the Law of Gut Magic. You can't cast any more spells, but all of them, and it just gives you a lot of versatility.
And Mick Wendel?
Yeah, no, we were talking earlier about how a lot of the abilities are counterintuitive. Questionable Hygiene is the first one that kind of really ties in with how ogres play. You want everything to run forward. So while the Slaughtermaster's running forward, giving him your Cauldron buffs, now you've got this extra -1 to hit to make you that bit tankier, so you can lose your so you don't lose your stuff as quick. Other than that, the Herald of the Gulping God, it's not bad. Don't take battle shocks wholly within 15, but he has to be fighting, and he won't last long if he's in a fight. Spell Eater's kind of cool. I was thinking of using it in a with some endless spells, but yeah, that's about it. Nothing else really game breaking there.
We've got 6 to choose from the traits of the Beast Claw. If you're taking a Frostlord or Huskguard, again, same question. What stands out, if any?
So Frostfell Aura is probably the pick I've normally gone with here, which is enemy units cannot retreat while within 3 of the general. This is for your Frost Lords, and like if you've got a Frost Lord on Stonehorn that's murdering you, especially if he's a Metal Cruncher, and you just want to retreat away from those D6 mortal wounds at the start of each combat phase, this will stop you from retreating. And when you really need to retreat onto an objective to win the game, and you can't, is game winning. I've had that happen against Sylvaneth, where I can have an opportunity to retreat out onto an objective to win. I try to retreat, and he's like, "No, you can't." I'm like, "Oh, well, fuck my life." So Frostfell Aura can be very good.
Yep. Nomadic Raider has its moments, but yeah, that'd be the only two I'd even consider.
Yep.
You've got 6 for your Icebrow Hunter.
So Winter Ranger is actually really, really good, like really, really good. And you will be almost tempted to not take a tribe, or if you're forced outside of a tribe to get the build you want, it's likely that you might have Winter Ranger. Your Hunter's going to be your general, and then you're going to have Winter Ranger for D3 command points every single turn, including when he's off the board in ambush. So I've certainly, the list I was going to take to CanCon before I switched last minute to Boulder Head is a Winter Ranger Hunter general.
And we have talked throughout this episode so far about the raw power of having additional command points. So that's a great call.
Yeah, Skull Packmaster might see some play just because it gives you that extra unit of Frost Sabers. But in some cases, like I've even considered just taking 2 Hunters instead for extra units coming on the board. But yeah, I'd agree. Winter Ranger is the top one there. It's aptly labeled number 1.
It's there for a reason.
Yeah.
Yep.
The Tyrant's Plunder, we've got some artifacts now, and we have 6 to choose from when it comes to our Tyrants. Same question I've asked for the last 5 minutes.
Gruesome Trophy Rack is your number 1 there in Underguts. It actually does, like, especially in the like the lots of heroes and stuff in the meta at the moment, I suppose, or heroes and monsters, it can benefit other lists as well, but you're not going to waste an artifact on other lists. You could go, again, if you were really invested in taking a Tyrant, you could really build them with a lot of damage and take Head Masher as well, but it's not, I don't think it's enough. I think Gruesome Trophy Rack is the only reason you include a Tyrant in the first place.
Yep. Or if you just want to start blasting, you take the Sky Titan scatter pistols, but that's for lols. And and if you just want to be truly lol, you take a double Tyrant with Gruesome Trophy Rack and the Sky Titan scatter pistol. You just start walk across the table blasting. But it's Gruesome Trophy Rack all day long.
Yeah, we've heard throughout the episode, you guys keep referring to this one. Butchers, we got 6 choices again from the Butchers.
Yeah, Shrunken Priest Head is an extra 5-up save if you really want to keep him alive, especially if you're double dipping. He's in a Gorman and you're double dipping in the pot, and you want to keep that going for as long as possible. But if you're not running in a tribe, then you're really trying to get the most out of your Butcher, then you've probably got the Wizard Flesh Apron and also the Gastromancer, so you know all the spells, and you can also cast an additional spell as well. So you've 2 spells, and you've got the whole spell lore to pick from. Rotting Dank Old Spores, are actually really, 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 really good. Like, really good. So it's just mortal wounds on a 4-up. You throw it at an enemy unit, and it explodes. Because your Butchers are right up behind your line normally, like, big hordes of stuff are within range. So just throw it in there and watch 30 gits, like, disappear, and it's glorious.
That's good, yeah. I'm actually looking at, as I said, I was trying to build some sort of endless spell based magic list. Not like 5 or 6, like maybe 3 or 4 endless spells max. But with the Bloodrock Talisman, because the ability to be able to dispel your endless spell and then cast it again somewhere else, I think can be quite strong. So taking that alongside the Spell Eater command trait, it means you don't lose a casting attempt either. So
I think you're actually onto something there, Mick, to be honest with you, because if you're not like if you're running Boulder Head, like you normally have 1 wizard. So you've got 1 attempt to dispel the spell. And if Feck have got the Chalice up, right? Like I failed to dispel it 3 times in a row in my most recent game. And that's like game winning, like just not being able to get rid of it. Yeah, so I've got 1 attempt to dispel it with my 1 wizard. I fail. All right, I guess you heal your terror guys. I guess you bring back all your ghouls every single turn, guaranteed. Doesn't matter how much damage I do.
Mm-hmm.
So just having the ability to dispel that critical endless spell, and we're getting more and more of them these days.
Yeah.
Could actually be really, really, really useful. And if you're a competitive player and you're aiming to be playing like as well as you can and trying to get 4-1, let's say we're aiming for a 4-1, then you're probably going to be playing against something like Feck, right?
Yeah, for
at
sure.
some point in that climb, you can count on coming up against them. So, I don't think that's a bad choice as well. I think that's good.
We have 6 relics of the Everwinter.
This is Frostlord or Huskard.
Huskard, yeah, correct.
I haven't even looked at these much. I looked. The first one was the only one I really remember, and the Skull Shards of Dragar. That's just because it was it's kind of a way, if you don't have a lot of magic in your army, the Skull Shards are a good way to fill that void. I like the Rhyme Shroud purely because there is actually a lot of shooting coming up in the meta at the moment, and making your already tanky Frostlord tankier. And he gets to fight. He gets to combat. Less damaged. That's what. So they're the 2 main ones for me.
We've got 3. We got 3 trophies for the Icebrow Hunters.
Katanak Browplate is what you're going to see here. Yep.
Add 1 to the save roll for attacks.
And it's an extra command point. So if you have the Katanak Browplate, that gives you a command point, plus the Winter Ranger, which is D3 command points, and then the 1 from the turn, and then the 1 from the battalion as well. So you can actually, this is how you're really loading up on command points, and to burn on those Frost Sabers when you come in, or alternatively just to spread out so that the whole game you're re-rolling 1s to hit on all your other units. Like, that's actually really important as well.
Yeah, the other 2 are not worth talking about.
Am I right to assume that when we tap into malign sorcery, the common artifacts of the Thermal Rider Cloak, the Ethereal Amulet, the Eighth of Quartz Brooch, maybe even the Griffeather Charm, these are all artifacts you might pull out as well?
Yeah, it's like for most armies, those artifacts from malign sorcery are generally better than all of the artifacts that we have in the book, with the exception of things like Gruesome Trophy Rack, for example, which is excellent and have a specific role. But for the most part, you're going to take the tribe-specific ones. You may take the Katanak Browplate and the Gruesome Trophy Rack, or you're going to be taking the malign sorcery ones.
Yeah.
You guys have mentioned quite a few times the spell, the Rib Cracker, seems to be one that's come up again and again and again. Is this the number 1 go-to spell, or is there something else that stands out for you guys?
For me, the Rib Cracker is number 1 because it targets an enemy unit rather than a friendly, and targeting an enemy unit means I get multiple benefits if 2 or 3 units charge them. That'd be my first one. Blood Feast would be my second, and Blubbergut Stench in my Underguts list would be my third favorite. Just purely because of the potential of mortal wounds. I've had 1 game where I did 16 mortal wounds, another game where I did 2. So it's very swingy. But the other ones, they'd be my top 3 anyway.
Yeah, the spell lore is really, really good, and there are uses here for, like, it doesn't matter what flavor of ogres that you're running. There's a book there there's a buff to support them, and then a few buffs that cross over across all of them. So Blood Feast giving you an extra attack is amazing, especially on units of like 12 Gluttons or Iron Guts. Like, oh my god, you're talking about damage going through the roof there. Rib Cracker, for all the reasons Mike said, is just universally awesome. Blubber Grub Stench, you'll see you taken in Underguts where you have Rhinoxes that are charging a lot. You want to buff those up so they're doing mortal wounds on the charge. Molten Entrails, you're going to see if you're taken lots of Beast Raiders, right? Lots of Stonehorns and things like that. And Greasy Deluge is another way to get a -1 to hit. So the Greasy Deluge and Bad Hygiene, for example, there's also a -1 from the Firebelly. There are ways you can try to build a -1 to hit, or you've got a Troll Hag in here. Greasy Deluge combines with that. If you're running Blood Gullet, of course, you've got 4 picks, right? So you can pick, because you're picking two spells for each wizard at least. So you can really start to try and stack. But of course, all of these spells pretty much go off on a 7, so they're kind of hard to get off. And in Blood Gullet, when you've built into casting as many spells as you can, you may get one off a turn.
Yeah,
Between all your wizards casting and your enemy unbinding. But let's be real, on ogres, one of these spells going off is significant. Like it makes a huge difference because it's a big amplifier. But they're all great. You want to lean into them, but they're hard to cast, and you're kind of like, shit, I'm investing so much just to maybe get an extra spell off.
With the Law of the Sun Eater, so assuming you take a Fire Belly, you got 3 choices. Do any of these stand out for the Fire Bellies?
Makes it very difficult because the Fire Belly is not a great choice initially, and then like I really liked Billowing Ash until I saw it was cast on an 8, and because I was going to pair that up with a Vortex. Like Fiery Whirlwind, this is the thing. Like a lot of people were drawn to the Fiery Whirlwind. Oh my god, a great way to half the size of a unit of 1 moon models. But then you're kind of thinking, do you need that? Is that something you need to invest 120 points in and potentially cast and not be dispelled? Also be within 12 inches. All these conditions when you could probably just kill just as much with the 4 Iron Guts. It's a tough one.
The spells here are all really good. Yeah. And so when you look at a Fire Belly and then you look at the spell lore, you think, great, this is good. And then you find it extremely difficult to fit him in your list. Like there's nothing you want to sacrifice that is worth to fit him in with the cool spell lore. So it's a bit of a shame, but I would never ever cast dispersions on anyone for taking a Fire Belly and playing with these spells because they all are really good. They have great uses, but it's just hard to end up fitting them in.
I think Tongues of Flame is probably the best one.
Yeah, I know. As a Cities of Sigmar player, I've got my Halo Heart. We've got a very similar spell with the fire, the Whirlwind, and it almost comes automatically with the Umbral Spell Portal. So again, that's an additional cost if you want to go down that route. But you certainly want to be moving your Fire Bellies up.
If the Fire Belly was a 2-cast wizard, or I could make him a 2-cast wizard somehow, I'd probably take him almost every time. But just with a 1 spell, you're like, fuck.
Yeah. You got 3 prayers, and I know you guys said the prayers aren't the strongest part of the book. Any of these Beastclaw Raider prayers stand out?
Keening Gale for me.
Yeah, so the prayers aren't horrible. It's just they're very difficult to get off. And the opportunity cost to get them in your army means you have to take the Huskard on Thunder Tusk, which is expensive. So it's not that it's not that they're bad prayers. It's just they're not 300-point prayers or 400-point prayers. So the Pulverizing Hailstorm, that's an opportunity there to do a little Mortal Wound Splash, which no one will say is bad ever. The Keening Gale +3 to movement is pretty cool, especially if you're building into a You're Bad and your plan is I'm going to run these guys across the board, turn 1 to pin, and then I'm going to fight. Like you can lean into that as well. And then Call of the Blizzard is a little bit bad because bringing back just one Yeti, is like whatever. Like, yeah, it's a multi-wound model, but it's kind of a little bit whatever. But so there is some good stuff here, but it's just expensive to get it into your army. And then so the Pulverizing Hailstorm in Boulderhead, for example, that will go off on a 3-up, so it gets like better. But do I want to run my Thunder Tusk for a Pulverizing Hailstorm, a shooting attack which might not do anything, or do I just want to add an extra 50 points and run more Iron Guts? I probably want to run Iron Guts,
or a Stonehorn, or
It's just that's the problem. They're just too expensive, I think.
Yeah, there was one of the command traits, or was it one of the abilities that makes the guy a priest? And that's when probably the only time I'd ever take Keening Gale was if I gave my Frostlord or Huskard on Stonehorn the what's it called? Touched by the Everwinter. So he becomes a priest. I want to. If I do it, it'd be because I want to use like 3 or 4 units of Mournfang and being able to use Keening Gale. But yeah, it's done on a 4+. It's not really much. It's a pity. It's a pity you can't include it in unless you take Huskar and Thunder Tusk, which is just too many points.
Got 6 mount traits. So if we are on a Stonehorn, we've got 6 to choose from.
Yep.
Now,
Taking Metal Cruncher or the Black Clatterhorn are your absolutely go-to. And it's up to your personal preference what sort of horn you want. If you want a crunch horn who's going to crunch your opponent with a good armor save, you're taking the Metal Cruncher. D6 mortal wounds at the start of each combat round, so yours and theirs. But at the start as well, so before they even get to fight, it's a fantastic opportunity to chart things like Keeper of Secrets, Terrorgeist, or whatever it is before they even get to go on you. So that's awesome. Or the Black Clatterhorn, which we take in combination with the Branded Svard in Boulder Head to get a murder horn because he hits on 2s and just murders everything.
Yeah.
They're pretty much the 2 that everyone just goes to, and they're awesome. They're really, really good, and you should take them.
Yep, absolutely agreed. No difference here.
Nailed it. The beasts of so your Thunder Tusks.
We'll have to take Thunder Tusks to be able to have.
So with the assumption that you're taking a Thunder, if you were going to take a Thunder Tusk, what's your top one?
Probably Rimefrost Hide, just to jump up on the -1 to hit, and now you're also worse than the rend characteristic, so you're kind of increasing your survivability. But yeah, there's just nothing. There's nothing really great there.
So you've got the Avgar Ancient, which is the always strikes last within 3 inches of the Thunder Tusk. So there is a play here where you spend the 300 odd points on the Thunder Tusk, and then another 240 points on Iron Guts, and the Iron Guts just escort him around. You move up on an objective, he can shoot and do prayers off the objective, and anything that wants to come and hit him is fighting last, and then your Iron Guts are hitting, right? But it's an expensive build, and it doesn't work if you charge. So you're kind of like, well, it could work if I do this and this and this. Alternatively, if you just disregard every way that you think you're meant to play with a Thunder Tusk, put this on one and just charge him along with your Stonehorns, so that at least him and your Stonehorn are side by side. You're doing the impact hits, and then when it comes to your next turn, because it doesn't work on the turn you charge, but the next turn, your Stonehorn will get to fight first. But in reality, the people are just going to charge your Stonehorn on his other side, which is more than 3 inches away, and it's not going to really work.
Exactly,
so this is and this is one of the shames, like in the always strikes first, always strikes last sort of meta. This is what we get, and you're like, what the hell?
Ooh.
Yeah, I know. Thanks, guys. No worries. Where's my Stonehorn that always strikes first on the charge and then gets to do a double pile-in?
And flies.
Yeah, and flies, and is a wizard, and heals.
Yeah, and teleports.
And he costs the same points.
It is a pity because that 3-inch range just really makes that kind of pointless. If they said wholly within 12, then maybe it might be like, actually what you're saying there, a decent one. But 3 inches, it's so easy just to avoid that 3-inch gap.
I've got 2 burning questions, and then we'll wrap this show up. The last couple of ones that I just want to acknowledge is, are there any endless spells that you think synergize well with this book? And then finally, I want to know your hot tips for us if someone was going to start this army, and any advice from your experience. So first off, endless spells, anything that works well with this book.
So the first one that I've included in the army was Burning Head for my 3+ to hit Iron Blasters and rerolling 1s. So that worked quite well because I didn't want to have to spend 3 command points to make my Iron Blasters reroll 1s to hit. Screaming Bridge for Lead Belchers, not for the movement they gain because they actually move quite fast, but to keep on the D6 damage, D6 hits if they're moving forward, because you do want to move them forward. Anytime an ogre is standing still, you're losing time. It's just not good to stand still, and there's very few times where your Lead Belchers are going to stand still. And then I'm like toying with the ideas of allying in the Fungoid Cave Shaman, because he can be allied into any destruction army by the Malign Sorcery rules, and bringing the Cauldron, and then using Itchy Nuisance from that to be able to, deal with the activation wars a little bit. But I'm still testing out the idea of bringing Pendulum's just an unbelievable one, Geminids, but they're very expensive as well. So this idea I have of doing an endless spell list, I have to be very careful with the spells I use. using things like Palisade to stop people from charging you, or stop pile-ins, or stop optimal pile-ins at least, or funnel a battle into where I want to fight. They're all my kind of like top contenders for endless spells at the moment.
Do you have anything you'd add to that?
Flaming Skull for reroll ones to hit is actually really big in this army. There's always go-tos. If you want mortal wounds, you have the Pendulum, or you have the Racist Swords, for example, which are quite good against Chaos. I used to run them pre-book, but now I actually have good spells to cast. I'm not wasting them. Like, I've only got one cast per wizard, right? So it's hard to get them out. Like Geminids are really good as well, but I just find that things like Cogs, like I'm fast enough, and Cogs are expensive. I don't have a lot of points to play with, and Ogres come in big blocks of points, like 240 points per unit, right? So you don't have a lot of little 60s and stuff here and there to try and fill and flesh out. So for me personally, I pretty much leave them all behind. I don't take any. If I was, it would be Flaming Head or Flaming Skull or the Palisade, to be honest with you, just because they're quite cheap. Reroll ones has a big effect, and I just need a bit more board control sometimes. And the Palisade is also a cheeky way to get -1 to hit it.
Yeah.
You did mention Balewind in the past, where
potentially Yep, Balewind is excellent. Sorry, I run a Balewind. I can't believe I forgot it. I have a Balewind in my CanCon army. I've been running it the last 2 games. It's in there. Just for the opportunity that, okay, if I don't think I'm going to need to push my Slaughtermaster forward, he can go on the Balewind and Rib Cracker at extended range every single turn at the +1 to cast. But I'm not necessarily casting it every game, because standing next to the pot is sometimes more of a detriment than moving away. So it's just situational.
Yeah, and maybe the Maelstrom could be a nice little cheeky thing if you're worried about heavy magic armies. So that's probably the customization of this army. I guess the parting comment that I want to get from you guys is, what advice would you give to me as a player, based on all of your experience, whether I'm starting an army or maybe I want to go 3 wins, 4 wins? What would you tell me? Doom, what advice would you give me as a new player?
As a new player, if you want to play Ogres, go ahead and play the fuck out of them, because they're an awesome army. They're a heap of fun. There are a lot of builds that you can build into, and don't get wrapped up too much around what's strong, what's not, what the statistics say, anything like that, because you have very strong matchups, you have very weak matchups. You have some players, like at CanCon this year, we have a lot of really, really good players that are taking this army to CanCon, like Dave Kerr, the ex-master, he took him to Masters. So when you have really, really good players that are playing with a very optimal build as well, like a strong build, they're going to actually do really well. But don't carry that too far, right? And alternatively, if someone else is playing, they're always getting their poo pushed in, don't put too much on that either. Don't listen to what content creators say too much about whether something's good or strong or whatever that. Just like, if you like Ogres, man, just fucking play them, because they're awesome and you're going to have a lot of fun when you play them. And there's actually a lot of depth in this book where you can, there are 4 builds I can think of now, which are very different armies to each other, that I'm going to be playing in succession. And that's going to take me a year and a half of just playing Ogres. And I'm like a nutter. Like, I play Warhammer like it's crazy. I have a YouTube channel. I'm an insane Warhammer addict, right? If you're just a normal player, this book's going to be with you for like 3-4 years. There are different builds in there. So just get into it and have fun. And by the start collecting boxes, make a basic army. If you like the Beast Claw, just get 2 or 3 of the start collecting boxes for Beast Claw Raiders, and you have an Earlbad in there, you have your Huskguards, you have your Thunder Tusks. Start playing that, and it's sweet. And then you can add the Ogres in as you go. Or alternatively, you can just go with the Ogres first and then add in individual Stonehorns as you go. It's quite easy to do. But yeah, man, don't listen to anyone. If you watch one of my battle reports and I get my poo pushed in and I play like shit, don't be like, oh, I don't want to play Ogres anymore. That's just one game, man. Just play Ogres. If you like the army, play them, because they're fucking awesome.
And you've been playing it for a long time, so listen to this man. Mr. Wendel, final comments before I get you guys to shout out and self-promote.
Yeah, exact same to him, is that it would be playing for that reason. The other reason is they've actually got very easy conversion potential, because they all fit together. Every single ogre body is the same. You can put different arms on different models, and it's really handy like that because you can make very easy conversions. You can make hunters out of the stone horns. You can make converted Mornfang out of any of the models you want. So they've actually got a lot of versatility on the hobby side of things as well. If you're looking for something like that isn't just build out of the box, and also it doesn't require a lot of effort, ogres are great for that.
Yeah, and I'll have a parting comment as well. Is there's a lot of painting opportunity here as well. Like if you really want to practice your painting, they are a forgiving army. There's a lot of high quality definition and very easy parts to paint. On the flip side, there's a lot of cool dry brushing opportunity. But then also you go down the tribal route, and doing painting tattoos and painting some really cool markings. So lots and lots of opportunity in this army. Mick, Wendel, if people want to chat to you further after this episode, where can they find you?
Yeah, I'm on Twitter. I think do you send my Twitter handles on here somewhere?
Both your Twitter handles are in the show description.
Yeah, so I'm on Twitter quite frequently. I also we set up our own podcast, but it's kind of divulged into just tournament organizing. The three of us are the busiest people in the world, so never actually record any podcasts. But that's the Hero Phase, and that's another Twitter account as well. We have a Facebook page for the Hero Phase. We're actually running an event in January, the first of the comped events in the UK and Ireland area. I'm not sure about other areas. It's caused a little bit of controversy, but so it's a 2-day event in January, and that's pretty much it.
Awesome. Give this man a follow. And if you're not subscribed to Doom and Darkness on YouTube, do me a personal favor and smash that sub right now. But Michael, where can they find you?
So Doom and Darkness on YouTube. Don't worry about Twitter. It's hot garbage. No, I'm joking, folks. Follow me everywhere. So on Facebook, Doom and Darkness, Facebook page. On Twitter, just called Doom and Darkness as well. Give me a Google, give me a follow. That's how you can keep up to date with things that aren't posted on the channel. But please go over to the channel, give it a like, give it a comment. All the proceeds from my channel go to charity. So all of those interactions help grow it. They generate more money for charity. And that's all awesome and fantastic. So if you want ogre content, battle reports, topical discussions, Doom and Darkness is where you're going to find them. I'm not promising you anything. I'm not the most competitive player in the world. I just love ogres, and I talk about ogres all the time. So that's where you can find me.
It's a bloody great channel. Do please do me a personal favor and smash that subscription, and also actually watch his content. Don't just subscribe. Guys, this has been incredible. Thank you very much for exploring this book in the amount of depth that you guys have. Very fortunate to have two highly skilled ogre dad bod generals here explaining all the great things about the book and how I can really build a force and make a really good performance on the table. I'm going to wrap up the show. Thank you very much. If you aren't subscribed already, I do recommend you subscribe and hit like and let me know that you've enjoyed this show, and comment. And if you're running 12 man-eaters, please send that tweet to Doom, because we all want to see those 12 man-eaters on the table. That's all, folks. Thanks very much. See you guys soon.
See you.
Ciao.
Bye-bye.